You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com. Hey, it's Chris Spangle, the host of We Are Libertarians, and I'm here to tell you about our advertiser for this month, and it is the Jason Stapleton Program. Jason is a good friend of our show and has been the only guy that we've let buy advertising on our program. You know that we're not really big on paid advertisements, but we believe in what Jason does on a daily basis. He does what we do. He examines current events from a libertarian perspective, and he does it 5 days a week. Go check out Jason's podcast at iTunes. Check out his YouTube channel. It is amazing. His video setup is just so beautiful and professional. Jason is just professional, you know, he's everything that we're not. So visit jasonstapleton.com, you won't be disappointed. It's a highly engaging program, and he's a great guy, and we at We Are Libertarians love Jason, and we want you to love him too. So please, go to jasonstapleton.com and check out his program, download his podcast, check out his YouTube, and visit jasonstapleton.com. Get the Gary Johnson for President podcast, and keep up with the campaign at wearelibertarians.com. Chris Spangle, host of We Are Libertarians, and I want to tell you about our friends at Lions of Liberty. It is a podcast very much like ours. It is a group of guys who are motivated to entertain you and inform you at the same time. They have a show that is released 3 times per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Friday is Felony Friday. It's a special show about the broken criminal justice system. You can find Lions of Liberty on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and on lionsofliberty.com. Seriously, these guys are great. If you love our show, you're going to love Lions of Liberty. Very similar to what we do. They have conversation about current events. They interview people that are very interesting. While their show is very similar to like ours, they have a lot of different opinions than we do. So I think if you love We Are Libertarians, then you are going to love Lions of Liberty. So get it on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and at lionsofliberty.com. Welcome to We Are Libertarians. I am your host, Chris Spangle. We Are Libertarians brings you all of the irreverence modern politics deserves. We explain to you what the hell is happening in our world today and how we can fix it by thinking differently. This is a podcast brought to you by the We Are Libertarians Network. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes. That's what helps us grow in the iTunes stats. Like us on Facebook, share this episode with friends, and support us through PayPal or Patreon at wearelibertarians.com. We're supported by listeners like you, so $1 per episode by pledging $5 a month helps us grow. And we're always taking your questions or comments via email at editor@wearelibertarians. Joining me, as always, is the braved-hatted Greg Lenz. Greg, how are you?
I'm doing well, Chris. How are you?
You're wearing your formal hat this evening? And
yes.
You have a big event
Confederate
later?
formal. It's my antebellum prom.
He's wearing his... What do they call the white and blue checkered...
Gingham?
Not gingham. The suit.
Seersucker.
Yeah, you're wearing a seersucker shirt.
This is not a seersucker shirt. It is gingham shirt. And I think that you need to check your white privilege.
I'm about ready to put some ketchup and mustard on you, maybe lay it out on the table, have a nice picnic.
Is it because my willingness to wear pink offends you?
Is that pink?
Is it a challenge at your masculinity? Yeah.
Oh, see, I just thought that it was your Native American skin bleeding through.
Yeah, that's usually what it is. It has a nice hue to it. It comes through, seeps through the white.
His white is so strong. We'll post a photo of Greg in his shirt and our guest Dustin up on the Instagram. Check out our Instagram for all your dank meme needs. We Are Libertarians. Joining us is Dustin Sharpless. Dustin, how are you?
Very well. How's it going?
Are you nervous?
Never done this before, and
we'll be gentle, buddy.
I think I'm more. I feel like maybe you guys were desperate when you asked me because I'm so reserved. Asked me onto a podcast to talk.
Well, I'm fascinated by you.
There it is.
Greg can vouch for this.
I will vouch. I will verify that dear leader has taken quite the interest in who is Dustin Sharpless.
Who is this man of mystery?
Mm-hmm.
He's not in the libertarian. You're libertarian.
He's ANCAP.
Right? Are you a libertarian?
Philosophically, yes.
Okay, and make sure you talk right into that mic for me.
Okay.
And you have a smoking hot girlfriend.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You are you're on a board. How did we meet you? We're on a board, AFF, America's Future Foundation, Indy. Look us up. We do events. The last thing in this feed was our criminal justice reform panel. And we have a board with our buddy Tim McGuire, Brett Bittner, Chloe Anagnos.
No show Anagnos.
Yeah, and she was drunk as the other day. She was gone.
Who gets white girl wasted at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday?
She was so drunk. She was eating a salad.
Like it was a doggy bowl.
Yeah, she had her face in the salad. She looks up at me at one point. A tomato falls out of her mouth, and as it happens, she goes, "I fucking love vegetables." And like one of the other board members, she goes, I was videotaping her because drunk people are hilarious to me. I need content for the Instagram.
It's just usually not at 5 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Right, and she's fascinating, and she's like, "Get that shit out of my face. You're drunk." "I'm not drunk." "Oh, hi, Ashley." "Is her name Ashley?" She was so gone.
Yep, you can take the girl out of Elkhart, but you can't take the Elkhart out of the girl.
No kidding. And so everybody on the board, with the exception of the newest member, has been on We Are Libertarians except Dustin.
Okay.
And so we wanted to have you on. This is your initiation. You're now a real libertarian.
Oh, okay.
If you've been on We Are Libertarians and you have a Judd Weiss photo, you're officially a libertarian. Now, so tell us about your philosophy, because you're on this podcast for a very specific reason, which we'll get into later. But tell us, prove your libertarian credentials to me right now. Stand before dear leader and share your credentials. How did you become a libertarian?
Okay, that was definitely through the Ron Paul campaign in 2012. I became interested during... Yeah, it was actually in 2011 during the initial debates. I was watching and I was interested in these big ideas, and I had never considered, any outside views. Didn't really get into politics a whole lot before then. And he just seemed like, the one up there on the stage that wasn't crazy.
He wasn't pandering to a delegation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I know he's, some people call him a conservative or whatever, but he wasn't like set in old ways that are kind of dying.
Right.
Dogma.
Yeah, exactly.
He's conservative, but he's not trying to conserve that. He's not
Being wrong.
Right. He's not trying to conserve the state. He's trying to conserve principles of liberty, freedom.
Yes.
Yeah, a classical liberal, as they might say. So Dustin is actually a very good example of theory that I want to posit through today's show, is that there are two kinds of libertarian candidates that people love. There is the inward-seeking candidate of Ron Paul, the person that, like myself, you hear the voice in the wilderness of Ron Paul screaming, 5! And,
He is your North Star of liberty.
Right, where you hear this voice, and this is more the Calvinist view. You hear the voice crying in the wilderness, "In the Fed, I'm Ron Paul from 2012." And that awakens within you the spirit, because you have been chosen to be libertarian. And then there's the more Adaminian view for our Christian friends, where you freely choose libertarianism. And that's more of the Gary Johnson candidacy, where somebody like my dad and brother, for instance, will vote for a libertarian for the very first time. I don't think they've ever voted for a libertarian, even though their son was employed for 4 years doing that job. They will vote.
There's no coincidence there.
Right. Well,
had nothing to do with it, I'm sure.
As we've stated on past episodes, my family doesn't support me in anything I do. So
It's not true. They listen to Bob and Tom.
that's right. Yes. Well, that was before me, during, and after me. And a Gary Johnson type candidate is not somebody who naturally appeals to libertarians. He appeals more to people who might be libertarians and brings them into the fold. I don't think Ron Paul necessarily was somebody that brought in a lot of left or right people. I think Ron Paul was somebody who, man, I'm a libertarian, I just don't know it yet. And then, like, for me, I was a libertarian, I didn't know, I kind of thought I might be a libertarian, but I wasn't sure. And then foreign policy was my sticking point, and then he explained it in one of the debates, and I went, yep, that's my guy. That's me. Whereas like a Gary Johnson is, there's always two parts to me. Bob Barr, for instance.
Thoughts on Bob?
Oh, man. On Bob Barr. I mean...
Mustache aside.
It's got to be the worst candidate that the Libertarian Party's had for president, right?
Sure, absolutely. No, that's not true. Who was the Maru? He was pretty awful. I would say Badnarik was bad. Badnarik philosophically is good, but Badnarik as a candidate is bad. And here's why you're on. You laughed when I said Badnarik was a bad candidate. He was a terrible candidate. Compared to Gary Johnson, an awful candidate in terms of running a campaign. In philosophy, Michael Badnarik, great. How many new libertarians are being created by Gary Johnson versus the campaign of Michael Badnarik? Okay, so
how many libertarian voters?
Right.
That's the real question.
Libertarian voters.
I'd say more accurate too, because I don't think we know how libertarian any of the people that are newly going to vote for the Libertarian Party are going to be.
Are going to join after voting for it.
Right. So
we don't know yet.
Join the philosophy though.
Yeah, and I think
rather than the party.
I think a lot of times with like Gary, there is a bit of like Gary brought them in, but then also that was their first taste from the well.
Sure.
And so they're discovering they were that anyway. But like as far as creating Libertarian Party members, that is really he will have an effect. There will be new Libertarian Party members because of Gary Johnson's candidacy and his ability to draw in new people. But I would think it would be a mistake to say, hey, we got 5% in this election. We can anticipate that our party rolls are going to grow by 5% of the general electorate.
No, but even if they have that kind of success, are they going to be Republican light whenever they get new membership, or are they going to be
we call those William
Libertarian?
Welbertarians.
I was. I mean, so here's let me finish what I was positing. When I heard the call from Ron Paul, I was like, okay, that's me. But I still wasn't totally sold on the Libertarian Party, okay? Because I was sort of at a place where it's like, I know the Republican Party sucks. I don't want to be in that. I know the Democratic Party sucks. I'm definitely not going to be a part of that. And I guess the Libertarian Party, but am I throwing my vote away? And I guess do libertarians, because the libertarians I had met were not serious. You know, because you have to look at it like a person who had spent the past 10 years watching politics and had spent 4 or 5 years involved in politics at that point. I had a healthy dose of statism put on to me. You know, I wasn't born a pure libertarian. I was a Republican who was, pretty moderate, actually, pretty independent. I thought, and then, so I was going, listen, is the Libertarian Party going to find credible people to run for office? And then Bob Barr got the nomination. And I went, perfect. I can vote for that guy. Now, I didn't care about DOMA at the time, and I would care now that I've been a libertarian for 8 years. See, so my point is that I've been a libertarian for 8 years longer than previously, but it was a conditioning thing. The Overton window had to be shifted a little bit for me to vote for the Libertarian Party, and a former congressman to a person ready to cast off statism but not quite yet ready to do so. Bob Barr seemed like a logical choice. So Gary Johnson, to me, while he is not a perfect candidate, he is a stepping stone towards creating more libertarians. And what I am supremely irritated by are the amount of libertarians that don't get that are so focused on the purity of the community that they are blowing an opportunity to grow the community, to bring in converts. And I do think that growing the libertarian movement is a lot like growing a religion. I mean, there is a lot of similarity. You are trying to convince people to cast off their old ways by persuading them without force to adopt a new belief system. And incrementalism is not a bad thing. And is Gary Johnson? I agree with Gary Johnson 88% of the time. So, I've said before, Darryl Perry is closer in my ideology. I thought Austin Peterson was the better candidate in terms of presentation, but Gary Johnson was the one that was going to give us the best shot at getting media and getting in the debates, and he's doing a pretty decent job of it. These 2 town halls with CNN have been huge opportunities for my social circle outside of the libertarian community to learn what a libertarian is. And last night's CNN debate with Anderson Cooper, I can't tell you, I had no less than 10 people come up to me today at work and say, I know you're a libertarian. I saw some of your tweets last night. I just wanted to say I found those guys really refreshing and really credible, and I'm really thinking about voting for Gary Johnson. So what the fuck is the problem, libertarians? I just see a lot of libertarians on their Facebook feed and arguing with We Are Libertarian social media and me personally, and they're just saying, well, Nazi cakes and gun control and giving me the basic clickbait libertarian site bullshit reasons. You know, to be quite honest, some of those clickbait sites were run by Gary Johnson's opponent. And some of those damage points that Austin Peterson posed to win the nomination have stuck and have demotivated libertarians. And so now what we have are libertarians motherfucking their candidate when the people in your social circle who might vote libertarian are watching going, well, then now I'm just left with no choices. Because you're the jackass libertarian who has a candidate that isn't pure enough for you. But you don't realize that the people in your social circle watching aren't pure like you. They're 8 years, 10 years, 5 years away from being as pure as you.
If ever.
If ever. Okay? So why don't you inform your Facebook friends and stop being such a purist dick and give information to people who desperately want it, as opposed to selfishly arguing your own blind opinion. Now, to the Trump fan.
No. Well,
Greg
you were
Lenz,
talking to Dustin about some point you're trying to make or ask him.
To the Trump fan.
You got derailed by anger.
I am. I'm very keyed up. I mean, normally we talk for like 20 minutes.
This will be a tangential conversation where wherever we're triggered, we're just going to follow it down that rabbit hole.
I'm so mad. It's going to be me yelling. And I asked you last night, listen, dude, is it okay, Greg, if I just yell at libertarians for the next 9 months? Well,
I wonder if you have not listened to the last 4 years of this podcast, because it's basically telling them what they do wrong and how they need to be better libertarians, or else the God Emperor Ron Paul will not be pleased with them and offer them eternal peace in heaven.
And I've got some words for Ron Paul later.
Oh yeah,
we haven't even gotten there.
I'm shocked you haven't hit Dustin, because earlier this week in a different chat, Spangle was ready to choke the death out of that old man.
So I've got in front of me, and you should have heard me on the call the other day so I was talking to Johnny from the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, Mark from Lions of Liberty, and Roger from Lava Flow.
What's that?
Roger from Lava Flow.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's a terrible. So those three podcasts are they're great. They're a great JV team for the We Are Libertarian show. So check out those podcasts. And the four of us were on a phone call talking about some things that we've got planned.
Strategery.
Yes, and it was basically me yelling at the three of them going, you're all fucking stupid. You need to support Gary Johnson and quit being a jackass. The primaries are over. It's time to fall in line and listen. So I say to you, Mr. Trump, Craig is a Trump fan. And you, Dustin, who is... I don't know what you are. You're not voting for Gary Johnson. Ron Paul's not alive in the world anymore of politics. You hinted the other night that you might not even vote. Tell me why I'm wrong. Prove me wrong.
Okay. I don't know if you're necessarily wrong. I don't know how objective it really is. But for me, at least, like back in 2011, 2012, I actually... Let's say 2011. I was a leftist, actually.
Get out.
Yes, seriously. And Ron Paul, I was looking for axioms. So as I read...
Explain what axioms means for the non-libertarians listening.
I was looking for principles that hold true universally.
Okay.
They exist a priori.
Shut up, Greg.
And as I was, reading Ron Paul's books, and then going from there, reading... Human Action by Ludwig von Mises, reading Ayn Rand.
Murray Rothbard.
Yeah, it's very axiomatic. It's very basic, and it's so simple that it doesn't have to contradict itself.
Okay.
And what I found in Ron Paul was it created a paradigm shift. Like, I did 180s on so many of my views, just complete reversals.
Give us some examples.
Well, I had a sense of entitlement personally, even. So... That's actually the biggest thing that I ever took away from libertarian philosophy was just applying it to my own life, taking responsibility for my own life.
Ditto. Yeah, I think, and we've said on this that libertarianism is a lifestyle. It's a way of living as much as it is a political philosophy. Because as an individualist, you can't be.
Well, there are plenty of those in the Libertarian Party, I can assure you.
You have to be selfish, but you can't be selfish. You have to play well with others, but you also have to look out for you. So that's why libertarianism is great, is because there is that nice personal balance of looking out for yourself and looking out for others.
Yeah, and Ron Paul, for me, represented a paradigm shift, and Gary Johnson, to me, represents moderation between the left and the right, and that has no appeal for me.
He's the second generation of product designed for mass appeal rather than the hardcore early adopter.
Explain that for the non-nerds.
Well, no, so for instance, when Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak were creating Apple, the big argument they got into was that Steve Wozniak wanted to create something for the hobbyist computer person that wanted a bunch of outlets in order to be able to add auxiliary things on, so they could just totally nerd out in their garage because they'd be the only person able to use it. Like, it was designed for a very small market and of purists. Jobs was like, you don't understand. We have to make something that everyone in the world, it will be the bicycle for the mind. It's a piece of art, not a piece of technology, and it will have mass appeal, and it will be an enormous success. But it was designed for the market rather than starting from the purity of the product or just the technological aspect. Like Gary Johnson was picked because of appeal.
Yeah.
Libertarian Party didn't pick him on the first ballot because he had some issues where he wasn't pure. And there were a lot of critics about it, and they didn't trust him or feel like he gave enough face time to enough of the delegates. However, they eventually decided that, you know what, we can make do, we'll still criticize because he can get us included in polling. He will represent us well. We can trust him. His message does have broad-based appeal, and his experience will appeal to a bigger market than Austin Peterson, who the only people that will know will be internet trolls, even though he can present it in a strong way, but he will present it only in libertarian philosophically pure terms.
I don't know. I guess I just don't see that much libertarian about Gary Johnson.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, he put out a piece just the other day. You guys sent it to me, actually, about the case in Utah.
The Mormon case?
Yeah. So
I'll pull up and I'll read a little bit of it here in a second.
Courting of the Mormons.
So what that seems to me like is he's talking about, what the red states have done with religious freedom laws, and basically doing that and adding in protections, anti-discriminatory protections for affected groups.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That seems like a pretty strong example of something where you're taking a law that comes from the right and a law that comes from the left, packaging it together and calling it libertarian. And then
centrist.
He seems like a moderate to me.
Sure.
And he even goes on in the article to condemn discrimination categorically, saying, that almost as if the goal of government is to end discrimination.
Sure.
And I don't know, Walter Block wrote a book, Defending the Undefendable, about, discrimination and
a
things
known
like
Trump
that.
supporter.
Yeah.
It's interesting enough, but
Yeah.
discrimination, it doesn't have to be. Discrimination is not categorically violent. It's not categorically wrong. People discriminate for whatever reason they have, and it doesn't have to be, based even on a group.
Yeah. You discriminate all the time. Like, and it's not you. And this is our white privilege argument. It's not even about race, but this is the white privilege argument: is that white privilege exists. It's just so ingrained in your discriminating tastes that you don't see that you choose certain avenues, or you're afforded certain avenues that you don't get. It just exists. It's axiomatic, but it's not. It's so. I don't want to argue white privilege, but like we discriminate. I discriminate. I choose Meijer over
By doing
Walmart.
We Are Libertarians, you are discriminating against Republicans and Democrats by not pandering, producing a podcast to appeal to them specifically,
to a broader audience.
Exactly. By just talking politics, we're not appealing to to sports, to celebrity news.
I will tell you, there are times that I regret choosing this name because I would love us to be a little less discriminating in the audience that we choose, not catering just to libertarians. And catering more to a broader audience, because I don't think that, I think our audience is libertarian, but I don't think our audience is nearly as hardcore, quote-unquote, libertarian as maybe Rogers at the Lava Flow, who's based out of the Free State. Mm-hmm. Our audience is a little bit more of, those first time I'm trying to figure out politics, our friends and family type show than maybe others.
Yeah.
So, let me read a little bit of his. This is in the Deseret News. So Utah's very important to the Gary Johnson campaign. They think that they can really tip the balance in Utah. First, they're trying to get 15%. Second, win enough states in the November general election to take sufficient electoral votes from Trump and Hillary so that no one emerges within the required 270 vote. Third, when the race moves to the House of Representatives per constitutional mandate, survive the first round of voting between the top three candidates, and in the final vote, whether the other one is Trump or Clinton, prevail by attracting all the support from the one who isn't standing. Fourth, plan the inauguration. And so Utah is the base of their campaign and is incredibly important to their that strategy that the Johnson campaign is trying to reach at. That specific piece of information was from August 1st in the Deseret News. The article is titled, "They're Telling Us There's a Chance. Could Utah Help Land a Libertarian in the White House?" Now, Gary Johnson was walking through some reporters and said something that ticked a lot of people off in the Mormon community. He inarticulately... is it indelicately used Mormon persecution by the government to highlight the government, choosing one religion over another and saying that we don't want to have state-based religion, and a lot of Utah Mormons got upset. So he wrote an article. He wrote an opinion piece on August 2nd titled "Exclusive, Gary Johnson Clarifying My Views on Religious Freedom, Mormons." And this is a significant disagreement that I think that Gary Johnson has with the majority of the libertarian community. I think all of us in that town hall and anybody reading this would rather have him just say it's not the government's place. And I think on this issue, what Gary Johnson's strategy is to try and walk some sort of tightrope and to not piss off the left, but not piss off the right, and try and strike some sort of balance. And that doesn't sit well with libertarians because we're, all a little on the spectrum, and we like...
Supposedly the party of principle and not pandering to create coalitions.
Yes. Sure. More on that later. So he writes, given the divisiveness and the pain that have accompanied several state religious freedom laws, I approach attempts at legislating religious exceptions to anti-discrimination laws with great sensitivity and care. That's not libertarian wheelhouse, sensitivity and care when trying to craft any kind of messaging. Religious beliefs have played a vital role in forming America's character as well as my own. I was raised as a Lutheran, and I believe in God and consider my faith and involvement with organized religion to be an important part of who I am. Yet there have also been times in our history when religion has been invoked to justify serious harm. In years past, opponents of interracial marriage, desegregation, and other efforts to protect civil rights too often cited scripture and religion in making their argument. To be blunt, certain politicians have twisted religious liberty and used it as a tool to discriminate. I 100% agree. And
they wouldn't be politicians if they didn't.
Yeah, I think Mike Pence, if you go back and look at our RIFRA episode on SoundCloud, it's very clear what was happening. They were using the religious argument to try and discriminate against gays and lesbians.
Yeah. It was discrimination, cloaked in enhancing liberty for one group, by discriminating against the ability to sell to the LGBT community. out of religious beliefs.
Right. So later he writes, in part because of this unique history, talking about Mormons, I believe Utah has found an appropriate balance in a religious freedom law that serves as an example to the rest of the country that non-discrimination and religious freedom are not opposing forces, but can instead go hand in hand. I want to be clear. I believe we can and must strike a balance between our shared American values of religious liberty and freedom from discrimination. My concerns lie with the possible consequences of politically driven legislation which claim to promote religious liberty, but instead rolls back the legal protections held by LGBT Americans. This does not in any way diminish my respect for and commitment to the legitimate protection of the right to believe, to practice, and to express deeply held religious beliefs. When it comes to civil rights and the LGBT community, states are best served when they take an inclusive approach of fairness to all. Interestingly and commendably, Utah did just that with the passage of the so-called Utah Compromise, which you can Google. I did not. I don't know anything about it. At a time when several states, including Indiana, under Governor Mike Pence's leadership, and if you want to hear more about this time, go to SoundCloud, look up our RFRA episode about a year and a half ago, I think, took a divisive approach by introducing religious freedom bills that were clearly aimed at LGBT individuals. Utah took a different path. The goal was fairness for all, fairness for people of faith seeking to live their religion in fairness to the rights of gays and lesbians. This approach was actually led by many leaders of the LDS Church. Having crossed the plains of the United States seeking the freedom to worship as they chose, Mormons have a keen appreciation of how minority groups can suffer under a majority rule. Rather than seek to pass a law within a thinly veiled intent to discriminate against gays or to permit everyday businesses to discriminate against gays, this Utah Compromise provides an example of how we can strike a balance between religious freedom and civil liberties. They actually describe it. The Utah Compromise barred discrimination against lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgendered individuals in employment and housing. In addition, the Utah law requires the office of every county clerk to be available to solemnize same-sex unions. At the same time, the law provides reasonable protections for the religious freedoms of speech and association of bona fide religious organizations and made the religious and LGBT protections inseverable. This is a Utah solution that appropriately reflects the state's diverse and strongly held freedoms, supported by the LDS Church and the state's leading groups. And he goes on to say, America's big enough to accommodate differences of opinion and practice on religious and social beliefs. As a nation and as a society, we must reject discrimination forthfully and without asterisks. Most importantly, as president, I will zealously defend the Constitution of the United States and all of its amendments. So, take away from that what you personally believe. There is no longer goal of getting the state out of marriage, but Gary Johnson takes the view that a lot of directional libertarians as opposed to destination libertarians take, which is until we can roll back government to that point and make society comfortable, we must allow everyone to be as free as possible. So, Dustin, while not libertarianly pure, okay, while not being a simple, direct answer, is it not an appropriate stance for a politician who's running for a high political office for a political party to take such a position as, let's find compromises where compromises exist and allow the most freedom possible for the most amount of people?
I don't know that that's really what he's achieving or striving for, if those are his goals or his examples that he's going to follow.
Okay.
In this particular case, you have the right to discriminate based on religious reasons. So you have, that's a case of rights for thee and, not for me or for other groups. And then you're saying that you're offsetting that with more protections. So I don't know if you'd call those Gay Lives Matter laws or what, but enhanced penalties or whatever it is, or
remediation through legal
Yeah, or the idea that you're going to prove someone's intent or why they discriminated or why they did something to someone, and you would have to try to legally prove
intent.
Yeah, that it was. It's like a thought crime whenever you have that kind of protection for a certain group. That whenever the accusation is that they targeted them for that reason. I don't think either of those things are necessarily good ideas. And I don't think they're libertarian either. I think you basically passed a Democrat law and a Republican law into one and called it libertarian. Instead of, having what I was talking about with Ron Paul, with the paradigm shift where people, at least some people, myself included, myself having been a leftist before, came around and started to see that, it's not the government's role and things like that.
Sure.
And not only that, but it seems like every issue that comes up, Gary seems to take that moderate approach. I haven't seen an issue come up where he's been, blatantly libertarian, and also not only that, but not blatantly moderate. So it seems like, marijuana, well, we need to legalize it so we can tax it. That's his approach. And then
last night he defended it with the need for the ability to use it for medical research, and then cited a CDC finding. For the first time, it was the first talking point I'd heard where it sounded like, I know what you're referring to is the same problem I'd had on his answer about it. And this was the first time I was like, oh, well, that actually, you're accepting it. You're not talking about taxing it to appeal to people. You're just saying Sanjay Gupta wrote an op-ed for CNN 2 years ago saying we need to, former Surgeon General under Clinton, we need to start exploring it as a medical treatment and research.
Yeah, that's a good reason to legalize it. There are lots of them, Well, even if it's just, there's no reason
saving money.
There's no reason to throw someone in jail for doing that, or saving money is a great reason because
we don't have any.
Every additional law that's passed, there's cost of enforcement. So if you're passing, the Utah Compromise, there's a cost of enforcement there.
Huge. I mean, you look at like the Civil Rights Act, which the intent is good. It's like this law, like the intent to accommodate and give people protection for mediation where real discrimination happens. As a libertarian, I would say you don't have grounds because anyone can choose to associate with whoever they want. However, we don't live in my libertarian world. So in this situation, they created extra carve-outs for extra people and ended up creating the Utah lawyer-free or Full Employment Act.
Right.
Like they will just create more law jobs.
Yeah, it's kind of like the tax code. I mean, they carve out more and more exemptions all the time, and
more accountants.
Ron Paul had the talking point that so many people are paying no taxes at all, and Ron Paul would not say, "Oh, we need to stop that." He'd say, "Well, great, we're halfway there. Half the people aren't paying income tax," and I think that's the right response. And not only that, but if you can have that kind of effect and have a zero enforcement cost, then it's perfect, and that's the libertarian ideal.
But here's the challenge for Libertarian Party people. Okay. We're on a podcast, so it's very easy for us to have theories, and it's easy for a congressman even to sit and think about ideas and talk about ideas, but an executive has a much different challenge, and this is why I think Ron Paul approaches things differently than Gary Johnson does. Gary Johnson being a former executive, 2-term governor versus, was it 8-term congressman?
I don't know.
A congressman for a while, 70s, 80s. Then he ran as a libertarian for president. Then
started a newsletter.
Then started a news. Well, let's not bring that up.
He was on Bruno.
So you have the problem that I've said forever, because coming from a background where I worked for Republicans. And then I worked in talk radio and covering people as a reporter on both the Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian sides, on all three. You get to see that, like, the challenge for a Libertarian that gets elected is that if you're an executive Libertarian being elected to office, purity is not going to exist. Like, there isn't going to be the option to just say no all the time. You're going to have to make decisions that move us towards freedom in a very slow way, because the system is designed to be slow. We're 100 years ago, the progressives set out to get us to where we're at now, and it took them 100 years, and they did it, And we have much the same challenge, only we don't have the benefit of free shit.
And the reason the Republican Party had to be redefined the first time is because it became branded the Party of No under Bob Taft in the 50s and 40s. They didn't have any ideas. They were Democrat light. It wasn't that they were against the progressive movement and FDR. It's that they said, well, let's be cautious about it. Let's be careful what we do. And eventually they just said, well, do you even have any framework for governing, or are you just saying let's make sure we take our time with everything we decide to do? And eventually died, and then William F. Buckley created the new conservative of the Christian right and economic individualism.
Right.
And so that's why the danger of the libertarian message is that it's just obstructionist. Let's theoretically say that there was a landslide win for libertarian candidates and they were put in Congress. It would take all of one election cycle for the Democrats to just beat them up and down saying, well, God, they're not for anything.
Right.
They're not for helping poor kids. They're not for helping people learn how to read. They're not for helping the disabled. They're not for helping people that are sick. What are you for?
Sure.
Well,
and then they'd get round.
That just makes me think that libertarianism is not well suited for
governing
public
consumption.
Office.
Right. Because what I see in Gary Johnson is exactly that, is somebody who is trying to look at government and say, how do we
do it better, even though we don't accept that it's necessary?
I'm going to veto a lot of bills. I'm going to say no as much as I can. And then where there is going to be action, I'm going to try the best outcome. I'm going to try for the best outcome
to perpetuate the state.
Yeah, but that's the inherent problem that I don't think that a lot of our friends in the libertarian media get, because they've never served in the government. They've never really covered government, and I have a unique perspective that I think a lot of them don't. And so here's what I'm trying to say is the reason Gary Johnson is different is because Gary Johnson's actually had to be an executive and has served in government, and you've never done that. And so it just feels off to us, because you're right. Government and serving an elective office in the current environment of government is inherently off to libertarians. It makes Gary exactly like what you say. He looks wishy-washy. He looks
moderate, not libertarian.
Moderate, which is the exact same reason that Ron Paul stated that he will not be endorsing Gary Johnson on Fox Business recently, which we have posted in the Gary Johnson for President podcast. I would just like to say to Mr. Paul, that's the exact reason I won't support Rand Paul. Rand Paul, I don't think is as nearly as vocal as his dad. He doesn't come out and take principled stances nearly as often as he should. He only does it when it's politically safe, and he's wishy-washy. So why the double standard? But yes, I agree with you. I think Gary Johnson, he doesn't sound libertarian, but I think I understand why he sounds the way that he does, is because he's trying to run for an office and say, libertarians have solutions, and these are our solutions for the current environment, not for 100 years from now.
Well, I actually think that Rand Paul is quite a bit more libertarian than Gary Johnson.
He's like you. He's an ANCAP that's a Republican.
And it seems like whenever he does have positions or puts out proposals, the idea is rolling things back. Mm-hmm. Whether it's his huge budget, it was a tiny budget for the for the Congress and whatnot, but it's always about rolling things back. It's not about taking something from each side of the aisle and adding on to our laws. So it seems like he takes a libertarian approach. He has a different paradigm than Gary Johnson when it comes to a vision, or when it comes to examples to follow.
He's also a senator, though. He's also
a legislator.
He's also one of the first people that was out of the Republican field, and it's because he never got any traction from the media, because nobody took him seriously, because his proposals were quote unquote too extreme. And so
I don't think he ever actually so in the media and the debates, he never had when they asked him specifically what would America look like after a Rand Paul presidency, he didn't even have a vision. He presented what it wouldn't look like. And that's the libertarian problem, is that it isn't a destination to achieve. It's, if you will, make America great again, because it's backward oriented. It's a repeal. It's not even replace. It's just a repeal. And if it is a reactionary movement like that, the problem is you don't win many elections when you don't have you can't present where we're going. If you can only say this is what we're going back to, it's got to be an extremely special set of electoral situation.
And I'd also say that Gary Johnson's trying to look like the grown-up moderate in the room compared to two candidates who are on the extreme. It's part of his campaign strategy.
He's selling libertarianism as the common sense center to the stupidity of the right and the stupidity of the left.
Has he taken the world's smallest political quiz?
Yeah, because he didn't score 100% with himself.
No, that was I side with. He has at some point, I'm sure.
Did he land right in the middle?
I don't think so. No, he's in the libertarian quadrant.
Did he answer maybe to everything?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I get it though. Like Gary is a politician, and Gary ran because he's making a wager that this is the one election where, for the first time, libertarians won't be criticized with questions about prostitution and drugs, and they're going to get the microphone where people are desperate for an alternative. And so his wager and his campaign's wager is that if we show up, we look like grown-ups, even though we abandon the libertarian philosophical viewpoint for our positions, we will bring enough people into a big funnel that more will filter down than should we take the Ron Paul approach, where we stick to principled positions and wait for people to accept them as the right one.
It does create more Republican light or Democrat light, but so was I. I mean, I was Republican light when I became a libertarian. I was for gun control. When I became the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, when they hired me, I was for pretty strict gun control. And over the next 4 years, being around gun owners and learning more about it, I realized I was totally wrong.
The thing is, it turns off a Dustin completely. Like, you have no time for the Gary,
right?
Yeah.
You know, you love Ron, but no time for Gary.
Let's just say, if you feel like you're getting beaten up here, everyone listening is agreeing with you. So.
Well, I think what's really disappointing is that what was once the self-described party of principle has taken an election year where the Democrat and the Republican are so unpopular that people are going to fill in that bubble on whoever is the third candidate, that they've elected or they've nominated maybe the second least libertarian candidate that they've ever had, and a guy who takes moderate approaches to every single issue.
I just don't necessarily agree with that, because I don't think John McAfee would be even anywhere close to the media attention that Gary gets. He wouldn't be anywhere near 15%, and there wouldn't be, the debate commission president came out sometime in the past week and said, well, if Gary's close, we'll put him in.
It's an appeal play. It always has been.
Right. And so to me, I look at it and
it feels like buyer's remorse to a lot of people.
Would I rather have Austin Peterson out there messaging? Absolutely. But do I think that he's going to get heard? No. And so when I look at my I Side With quiz on the issues, I've got 3 choices on the ballot. One of them I agree with 88% of the time, and that's Gary Johnson. I don't agree with his stance on religious freedom. I think you're right. You're totally right. It's wishy-washy. It's not full-throated.
It's political.
It is. It's a political answer, and he's a politician.
Except he's doing it poorly because he's trying to tightrope walk rather than just come out and say, listen, I understand that it's force. At the end of the day, I think that the political values of being on the side I'm on outweigh the costs of the other side.
But
I don't think that's what he believes, though.
But I will say that
he doesn't.
That's
why he can't answer it right.
Yeah.
But I will say that you're seeing an appeal from you're seeing a popular appeal towards Gary that you didn't see with Ron Paul or any other libertarian candidate.
But it wasn't the same situation either.
Sure.
And that's why he's the right candidate, in my opinion, for this time. Because I'm not sure that by being the moderate centrist instead of the libertarian candidate, that it is going to create more Libertarian Party members. But I do think for the first time it will break the psychological mindset of voting for one or the other in the voting booth. It will, instead of that being the choice, for the first time ever, a lot of people are going to have a psychological reset where they pick the third party that they wouldn't traditionally.
They're just not going to give a shit about the wasted vote for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm. Well, they'll say, well, it's all wasted. It's Hillary, Trump, or some guy that I actually thought had some decent ideas. What the hell? World's going to burn anyway. Let's vote for this third guy.
And as to the party of principle line, I've really come to think about this over the last 6 to 9 months, and a lot of it in talking to Roger Paxton and other ANCAPs. The problem is that if you're involved in politics in any way, shape, or form, your principles don't really there's I'm not saying they don't matter. That's not what I mean. Like, I don't know. I've explained it better on past shows, but the benefits of appeal outweigh the cost of principle. When I am sitting here explaining to Dustin exactly what I believe and vice versa, there are no extenuating circumstances. There are no other factors that come into play. Dustin believes what Dustin believes. We can look at axioms. We can look at, Austrian economics. We can look at criminal justice reform, and we can say, this is the world that we should craft. Okay? But once you start factoring in getting votes, then you have to start looking at campaign strategy. You have to look at what voters want, and what voters want comes before what we as libertarians want a lot of times. So you really can't have purity. The idea of purity is that there are no contaminants at all.
Well, you can
in your positions.
It's just a bet that it's going to pay off.
I mean, when I look at Gary Johnson, I look at 88% of the time I agree with him on issues. Personally, I think he's a very humble, thoughtful, temperamental, well-tempered person. He would be a good president. He's a good man. Like, when I look at those factors, I go, well, yeah, of the three choices, is he pure? No, but he is the best choice. So,
in this race, specific race. And the thing is, too, Ron didn't run. There wasn't a Ron in this. Austin Peterson wasn't ready. And so he's the closest probably to Ron, and he's a stronger...
he's much stronger
he's a stronger messenger.
Much.
But the problem is you can't trust him to not get childish and devolve into something that's embarrassing and a black eye for the party yet. He has to learn humility first. With Gary, that was the second choice. John McAfee is, for whatever, I mean, regardless of whether the truth of the charges, he is a fugitive. He would not be able to go to the Central American Summit and not be arrested in Belize. I mean, he's a fugitive of the Belize law enforcement. That isn't exactly what you want to follow up, or you want to lead with on a campaign stage with Hillary and Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Because then you just somehow nominated the one candidate that makes Donald Trump look moderate. And he was a reality TV star at least. At least he wouldn't be arrested if he went to a Central American Summit.
Right. So libertarians are sitting here judging Gary against their own personal philosophy, their own perfect candidate that they've created in their mind, their perfect dream love, Ron Paul, who, let me be honest about Ron Paul. I'm sorry, Dustin. Ron Paul is a self-interested person. Ron Paul cares about selling subscriptions to his website, selling curriculum. Ron Paul cares about Ron Paul and being important in the ANCAP community.
Good for him.
He's a libertarian.
He's more effective.
But
he's more effective at creating a world that's more free.
Is he?
Yes. Because my world is more free. Like, how many people are out there saying that their own world is more free?
Sure.
Because of Gary Johnson.
And Ron also nearly won Iowa in the Republican primary. And if you threw Gary in the Republican primary in any state, he wouldn't even get in the top 6.
I don't know. Well,
Utah and New Mexico, maybe. West, Colorado, Washington, Oregon.
You can't say that because I've met plenty of people who are libertarians because of Gary Johnson, because of his run 4 years ago.
And there's no data to decide that. I mean, like, it's a gut thing. I'm like you. Like, Ron appeals to me more than Gary because, truth be told, I wouldn't sit down with either of them and have a beer with either one of them. If I'd rather just have that beer alone. If it was a decision between Gary, Ron, and myself, I'd just sit and have the beer in silence.
I've had a beer with Gary Johnson. You want to take Gary Johnson?
Well,
I've met Ron. He's
I want to be
awkward
able to pass
weird.
a piss test after that beer's over. The thing is, though, I mean, the growing pains of the Libertarian Party are still happening.
Sure.
Bill Weld and Gary Johnson last night were not the libertarian, like, for a libertarian moment that everyone's been waiting for. It feels like a stab in the back to see it presented as the moderate middle centrist message, not the libertarian message, not the based in here's what we believe and why we believe it, because we finally got noticed and we abandoned it like it didn't matter.
It's like the word liberal.
Right. It doesn't mean anything.
I mean, it used to, classical liberalism was the word liberal. Mm-hmm. What might happen to the word libertarian?
I think libertarian is more of an umbrella term at this point, because you've got, when you look at Adam Kokesh and Gary Johnson, you can both describe them as a libertarian.
I don't.
You can believe
capital L libertarian. Yeah, Gary Johnson.
You can believe what you want, but you're wrong.
But Gary was a Republican.
Like if you base it on issues, Gary Johnson is absolutely a libertarian,
Little L,
and a big L libertarian.
He's the nominee of the big L.
I want to see his world's smallest political quiz.
He's definitely going to get 100 on that, because we all know what's going on with the quiz, little Brett Bittner.
Yeah, Brett is like if Hillary were doing the results for the election.
Okay.
That's like saying that, somebody who comes into the party that doesn't believe, little Chris Spangle in 2008, who thought that Bob Barr was the greatest and who believed in gun control, he was 75% of the way there. And you're going to say that he wasn't a libertarian?
Well, Gary Johnson in 2012 was talking about legalize marijuana so we can tax it. We should pay off. Maybe we're better off paying off other countries, giving them foreign aid. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's better that way. And that the Federal Reserve just needs to regulate the supply of money better.
Yeah, strip them of their second charter.
And to see him, I don't know, it's still not appear to have like the foundational principles of it's a paradigm shift. You have to look at things differently instead of just taking something from each side.
Right, but I'm saying is, if you're running for president of the United States, do you go out and give libertarian purity talking points, or do you try and say, here is the situation as it is, and here is how I would move us in a certain direction?
I don't think things move us that way.
But
that's the bet that we don't know.
Right. That's the age-old argument in the Libertarian Party is, do we go out and get a Ron Paul who preaches the gospel as pure as possible to save as many, to awaken libertarians?
But that's why he's a god. He was a martyr for years.
Right. Or do we get somebody who is basically a neo-libertarian, somebody who is looking at the issues in which it's the direction versus the destination libertarian approach.
Neo-libertarian, like neocon,
crypto-fascist libertarian.
But that's my point. Is if you were running for president, you would choose a different path.
You would mimic more Ron Paul.
I mean, ultimately, Gary Johnson just seems he appears as evidence to me that politics is not the way.
Sure.
That everything...
But you're not a political change subscriber.
Everything good and libertarian or for liberty will come from the private sector, which is what I ultimately believe. Liberty not being the role of government, it just reinforces that. It's like, well, what's the point? It disengages me. I don't know how.
And no, I totally agree with you, and that's why I started this podcast. To be quite honest, is because
outside the arena
in 2012, I was working as the head of I was the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, and I was doing application of political principles, our political principles in politics, and you're at the forefront of this discussion, this friction that you feel, where, all right, I want to go out and say exactly what Lou Rockwell would say, but you can't in politics, because that's not what voters want. Like, voters want more Gary and less Ron. Libertarians love more Ron and less Gary. We're totally opposite of what most people are used to in terms of politics. I think so. So what I thought at the time was, listen, the Libertarian Party is not the best way to create libertarians. The best way to create new libertarians is to go out and try and persuade people through humor and intelligence.
An indirect sell.
Give them some fun content to listen to, and maybe more people will become libertarian by talking these issues through and getting a liberal like Gina and getting a conservative like Greg and walking them through over the years.
I resent that.
Yeah.
I think Ron Paul would have done better in 2012 as the third candidate. If like the Libertarian Party had nominated
name ID alone,
then Gary Johnson. I think even now, Ron Paul having not run for 4 years and Gary Johnson running again after 4 years in such a I don't know, unique election, I guess, in terms of unpopularity of the main two candidates.
This will happen one time in our lives.
Like, even now, I would say a lot more people know who Ron Paul is than Gary Johnson. So, I don't know. I think Ron Paul is more effective at messaging and everything. And I think...
But he didn't run.
I think that the pure libertarian views can be expressed very well. I mean, Ron Paul's done it. Mary Ruwart is another one that does it very well. And her book, Healing Our World, was one of the ones that turned me from a leftist to voluntarist.
Absolutely. I just said recently, Healing Our World was... I intellectually got libertarianism. That was the first time that I made an emotional connection to the philosophy. Because like you, I'm more left, apparently. I just took the I Side With quiz, and apparently I'm a flaming left libertarian without realizing it. Yeah. So, but Dustin, the problem is that's not what the government sector, that's not what the media sector is looking for. That's why Gary Johnson's getting 5 times the interviews.
I think Ron would get more votes than Gary if all things, ceteris paribus right now. If Ron Paul were the Libertarian nominee, he would be in the debate period.
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
I think that Ron Paul to people outside of the libertarian community looks like a cranky old crazy man.
Most of the people that I talked to when I was first getting into politics and listening to Ron Paul said that they liked his ideas, not that he was crazy. They just thought that he couldn't win. I don't think the image was his problem. I just think it's the whole, he's a wasted vote thing, I guess.
Right.
And like Ron couldn't win those elections because there were serious candidates. It was Barack Obama and Mitt Romney. It was John McCain and Barack Obama. Like, this is an election where it's a change election, but the opposition minority party, or the party, the non-incumbent party, has nominated a reality TV star that 73% of Americans have a slight to severe distaste for. And so the context of the election would be Ron Paul has nearly universal name ID at this point in his career. Even the most apolitical have seen Ron at some point, where Gary had 58% in outside, not New Mexico, obviously, but the next best state, he had 58% name ID. And so Ron running, it would be, well, I've seen Ron Paul. He almost won Iowa. Hell, the GOP created a rule that they got screwed by this election because he damn near would have won the thing.
Sure.
And so if you can almost win it as a major part of a major party, I think there's enough broad-based appeal. And I still think that personally, this is my belief, I still think it's the dumbest, or sorry, I shouldn't say that because I don't know yet. I think it was the wrong choice to court the Bernie and left libertarian vote in this election, because there's 15% of the 15 to 20% of the Republican Party that doesn't believe Donald Trump is a Republican, that doesn't trust him or think he's fit for office, that are going to end up not voting or voting for Hillary Clinton, or hope to God Gary Johnson, but Gary doesn't message to him. Weld does.
Yeah, 90% of the Bernie supporters in a CNN poll say they're voting for Hillary.
So that means there's 10% left for us to fight for, and hope to God we can get them to show up on election day.
And they're more likely to go to Stein. And yeah, I'm totally with you. And I got the impression in that town hall with Anderson Cooper that the strategy, which I am with you, I don't think that this
I was just
a
so
good
pissed
strategy.
about it from the beginning.
It's just like Gary's going after the left and Weld is going after the right, and like that's just, people are looking at Gary. They're looking at him to be the leader.
He's the presidential nominee.
Right. And so not this co-president thing. So I do think that is an essential failure of this campaign.
It is. And I thought it from the beginning. And that's why I said I think for this election, the way it's going to shape up, Austin, even though he could leave some serious black eyes and it'd be high risk, high reward, Austin may be the right messenger of the way this thing's going to shape up, because right now there's somewhere between 10 and 20% of the GOP that is scared to death that Hillary Clinton's going to win, and they don't even want to pull the trigger for their own guy. Right. And so they would, a guy like William Weld, even a Massachusetts Republican who's on the inside and is informed and he doesn't present libertarianism as libertarianism. He presents it as Republican light.
Here's solutions.
You hear solutions, right. And he has ideas. They aren't very libertarian, but they are an incremental approach where ultimately you think you could possibly end up with a libertarian solution, but it's a small first step based on what's achievable. Where, like Ron Paul, if he ran, Ron Paul, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton, Ron could sit there and say, well, this guy got fired by NBC. This girl, she voted for the war in Iraq, and I've spent the last 20 years of my life saying that it was a mistake.
Ron's not that guy. Ron would have, I've been saying and I've been wrong. I mean, there's an inherent pessimism to Ron Paul that is a turnoff. And this whole discussion is so libertarian. I don't know how we end up. Because listen, we're debating what could have been and not what is. The point.
Yes, Ron didn't run.
The point that I am trying to make to libertarians is that this is your choice.
Yes.
And your friends and family are looking for a third choice. Suck it up and give them the information and let them decide if it's right for
one
them or
criticism of that is you and I were involved in a governor's race. Our harshest critics said, would you guys please shut up? People are watching and it matters what people think about us because they're trying to get information. And both of us vehemently said, no one is watching. No one cares. It is inside baseball and it is totally irrelevant. And this is what needs to happen. So are we being hypocritical by telling libertarians in a presidential race, stop criticizing the damn candidate, get in line. And if you have a problem, message them privately.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the inside baseball is that, like Lex comment about, Bob Barr and Doma, blah, blah, blah. Like, had I seen like in the week before the election, or even like from here on out, is what I'm saying. Like
under 100 days.
From here on out, our friends and family are paying attention. And I'm saying you should spend less time talking about the merits of the candidate,
whether or not the libertarian presidential nominee is in fact a libertarian.
He is. Like, just get over it. Like, he.
Are you telling Dustin?
Yeah, I'm telling Dustin he's a libertarian.
Hit him back, Dustin.
Go ahead.
Say in the Fed.
I don't know what to say to that. I mean,
he's absolutely a libertarian.
Tell him to bake the cake. Tell him that Anne Frank should have to sell the Nazi cake to Hitler.
I think it's your turn to tell us Donald Trump is a libertarian.
Well, he's a Trumpertarian. And for that, I would invoke Walter Block, who wrote Defending the Undefendables, as everyone at this table knows. No, it's a long play. It's a long-term play. It's not like I support Donald Trump.
I'm not arguing that Gary Johnson is the best libertarian. Clearly, that's me. But I'm saying he is a libertarian. And at this point, it's like, if you don't have anything nice to say, just shut up.
He's a member of the party.
You brought me on here.
I know.
Yeah, right?
I know, because
Aren't you glad?
No, I wanted...
Hasn't this been fun?
No, I wanted somebody who has a position that I disagree with, because I want to understand and argue with you. Yeah. And we're not going to change each other's minds.
Who are you going to vote for, or are you not going to vote?
And that's the question.
I was an undecided voter in 2012 on just that race. So I was going to vote, but I leave plenty of blanks, and I vote different parties and things like that. And I ultimately made the decision as I had the ballot, and I did vote for Gary Johnson. And I also...
You pulled the Johnson.
I felt like I had voter's remorse after that. Like, this guy's really not that libertarian. And then...
But the point... my point...
Going into 2016, I thought, you know what? I hope it's not Gary again, because that would be such a disappointment. I don't think I could vote for him again. And I also was hoping that he would pull someone as his VP instead of doing what he did in 2012, pulling someone who wasn't up for
Judge Gray.
Yeah, who he went out and got instead of listening to anyone in the party, or going with Lee Wrights, who also ran for the VP nomination in 2012. And he didn't do that this year either. He went and got his own guy. It's another former Republican, even less libertarian than
because they're
Gray.
trying to craft a campaign for non-libertarians. Because trying to win libertarian votes gets us 1% of the vote.
I mean, I guess we have different goals. I mean, my goal is not to see a Libertarian Party president. My goal is...
He doesn't see it as a viable path for change, so why would I get excited about a guy who's barely libertarian?
Yeah, and
anyway.
I think like I said, I think all these positive changes for liberty and for progress are going to come from the private sector, and I don't see Gary Johnson having one iota of influence toward that.
That's just so stunningly wrong.
It can't be stunningly wrong because we don't know.
Yeah,
it is not what you believe.
No,
but it is stunningly wrong.
It seems like he's made all these compromises with his message, or the party has. I guess it would be more accurate.
We have
that.
We decided to become a
it's
political
like
party.
They gave up.
Right. They became
It's
a
like
political party.
The libertarian. Yeah, exactly.
The libertarians need more demagogues.
Yeah,
That's what Dustin is saying. We need more demagoguery in the.
No, it's that he
No, we
doesn't
need more
think
principle.
he doesn't.
It's
The inevitable result is that we become another political party and not a party of principle.
Welcome to Republican light. All the problems, none of the power.
I'm saying that you have a choice. You have three options.
No, I have way more options than that. That's the thing.
No, you
don't tell me to vote
you
for
really
the
don't.
least of three evils.
But that's such a stupid argument.
That's destroying
somebody that you agree with. At probably, I bet if you took the I side with, what would have you taken it?
I did in 2012.
Okay,
but I agree with Trump on certain things and Clinton on certain things,
Sure.
probably. So
I do too.
No one agrees with Hillary on version. I mean,
But it's
the
less.
Democrat
It's
Party
less
barely
than
agrees with her.
50% with those people. We're talking about politics.
You got 68 with Trump.
and that's how do you?
It's now lower than 50.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you're going by the I side with percentage, and it doesn't sound very objective.
88%. Gary Johnson and I don't agree with him on 12%. I'm not going
Forced
to vote.
association.
I'm not
what?
going to take the opportunity to end the two-party system, to get a libertarian in the debates, to have people hear about a party that is a third party that the only thing we ever have needed as a political party is just people having an awareness of who we are. We finally have a candidate that has done that. People are hearing the word libertarian for the first time. We have a real shot at getting 5% for public financing. It absolutely
That
Dustin
should not be a selling point for libertarians.
No,
Public financing should never be one of our. As libertarians, we shouldn't shoot for that.
Guess what? It exists. That's the system.
I'm
Greg.
just saying.
That's the system.
I support it, and I get the political.
If you don't like it, get more fucking libertarians elected and change it.
But you can't force someone to accept that the political change avenue is the only avenue available.
Yeah.
Most people just don't accept it as libertarian. They don't see that as an option.
No, I'm saying I agree with Dustin. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's why I'm on the AFF board with Dustin.
You want him to force to vote for Gary?
No, I'm not forcing him to do anything.
I know. I'm
saying that it is in a libertarian's best interest to vote for Gary. And I think it's in the libertarians' best interest to do no harm to Gary Johnson's campaign.
Here's the critique of that, is that you're saying if they do government better, you're perpetuating government.
And not only that, but I've heard
that's the rationale.
I heard the argument in like 2012.
No, I'm saying this is the choice that we have. The choice that
He's saying it's a false choice because there isn't one, and that won't help.
I'm saying
in 2012, some libertarians were voting for Barack Obama because they want the state to come crashing down as soon as possible. There's all these different reasons with different visions that you could vote for any candidate and call it a libertarian.
You can make it a justification.
Everyone has their own rationalization. There's nothing objectively libertarian about voting for Gary Johnson.
If you want the state to end, Trump's the guy. If you want there to be societal collapse, everyone to lose complete faith that government can be done well, can be done efficiently, and that government is the avenue to create peace and harmony. If you're not voting for Donald Trump, you're the part of the problem.
Is that your play this year?
No, my part of the problem is I don't believe that there is room for a third party in American politics. I think that it guarantees Democratic victory in perpetuity because collectivists outweigh individualists every time.
Yeah, that's definitely a difference between the left and right. The right seems to be willing to break the party line more than the left, and that you see that in the voting records too. yeah, definitely. You see that in the voting records. The Democrats vote party line way more than the Republicans do.
Sure,
they are the ones who, regardless of what the evil is, the other side is the true evil regardless. And so that's how you can. Bernie Sanders created a movement and lost the primary via superdelegates of a party he wasn't even a member of, running on anti-corruption and making sure that everyone gets the same fair shake underneath the law, that it's all equally applied, and using government as a force of good in order to stop corruption and create the outcomes we want. The reality is Hillary Clinton is the reason the corruption exists and solely responsible for the creation of the bastard child of government it is today. And so when you say then 90% of people line up in lockstep and will support her because she's less evil than Trump, when Gary Johnson's standing out there and his name ID is growing, not everyone knows him well, you say, well, all right, that avenue is probably out. The fact that we're ever going to pull from the left in an election year for votes, not creating libertarians, but for actual votes when it's a matchup of, good versus evil, is probably not going to happen. So then it becomes, okay, well, that avenue's out. So then you say, well, either it's the Libertarian Party, which I know the data doesn't show this, but for the party of individualists, the Republicans are economic individualists. And if you don't, it's like you guys said, it's the paradigm shift is that I'm responsible for myself and no one else is, which is economic responsibility, which is the foundation of all liberty. You can't have any liberty at all unless you are self-sufficient and get to dictate your own decisions. And so then you say, well, there's the Liberty Caucus, Rand Paul, Justin Amash, Thomas Massey, Mike Lee to an extent, and then there's the Libertarian Party.
Right.
And the most vehement critics of the Liberty Caucus are not the left. Cory Booker works with Rand Paul.
Sure.
Go ask Libertarian Party members what they think of Rand. Mm-hmm. They hate him. And so then you say, all right, well, let's say the Libertarian Party grows because Republican disillusionment grows. It's already happening. Mary Matlin and George Will. It's all happening. What ends up happening, though, is it isn't a 33-34 split. The collectivist versus the individualist is a 60-40 split or a 55-45 split, where if the libertarian grows to, say, 40 or say 30% and the Republican falls to 20 or 15 or whatever the split is, you're always outweighed by the collectivists that are the people who can vote themselves the property, dollars, and rights of others. And in time, you guarantee loss.
But I think you're talking about people who think about this in that deep of terms. I don't think a lot of libertarians even truly understand
the long-term game.
To Dustin's point, I don't think a lot of libertarians fully understand individualism. And I think it's a constant process.
It's education.
Yeah, a constant process to apply different issues because. And here's my argument for why Gary Johnson is an effective candidate for us this year, is that people think in terms of political issues and where they agree with candidates on issues. We don't think about it like that anymore. We start from the individual and what is best for that person and how they interact with others and how can they be most prosperous. We start from a totally different place where most people start with, well, like a checklist. Do I agree with this person on gun control? Do I believe what this person believes on this? Do I believe on abortion? Do I believe like they have like a checklist of issues.
A ranking system.
Right. And so I don't think people come at it. That's why when you include Gary Johnson and Jill Stein in CNN polls, Gary's polling 3 points from Clinton and 1 point from Trump. That's only 4 points from the two major parties for his support. The rest is libertarians and independents.
Yeah, there's no one deciding between. There are very few deciding between Gary and Donald, unless it's a protest vote, and they're afraid they might cost Donald the Republican win.
Go look at the CNN polling.
Yeah.
It totally abolishes the wasted vote argument that he's pulling from Trump.
He isn't.
He isn't. He's just not.
The only Trumpertarian is Walter Block. And like that actually, it's that Hans Hermann Hoppe forcible removal of Democrats and communists from society.
Right.
And that, sets the stage for liberty.
So I just look at it and I go, okay, this is how the voter thinks. Mm-hmm. And this is, voters are going to...
Politically.
When I look at this election cycle, I say, okay, my choice is Gary Johnson because Trump and Clinton are out. So I'm going to plug Gary Johnson to my friends and family to take a look at him because that will condition them to vote against the third party.
Breaks them out of the mindset.
So do I think that coalition parties will ever happen? The history of America and the way that the system is designed says no.
If libertarianism, the Libertarian Party grows and becomes the Liberal Democrat Party in the UK... The difference is they have parliamentary system with equal representation. Right. In the United States, that means Democrat majority from here on in.
Sure. So,
which isn't liberty good for liberty at all.
Right. Yeah.
Unless you want to be Detroit or Flint, Michigan, and have water problems living on Lake Michigan.
So that's why I really do think that. That's why I agree with Dustin that politically, the way to convert people to libertarianism is not through politics at all in any party, because you're never going to be successful necessarily. You will over time, but you have to play by Eugene Debs and the progressive model from 100 years ago with the Socialist Party. The Socialist Party was designed to move the Democratic Party left. And so it did that through outside and inside pressure, and it had a very if you go back and read the Socialist Platform of 1912, it reads like Barack Obama's presidency and George Bush's presidency, and the way that they ultimately achieved societal overtaking and creating more collectivists was through education. It wasn't through politics. Politics was a means to get to that avenue to create. Okay, yeah, we want to try eugenics. We want to control the education system. We want to control the university system. So libertarians have to think outside the box and not look at it as we're wasting. My point is we're wasting so much time arguing about Gary Johnson that we're really missing the point. Is that
forest from the trees?
Right. That it doesn't matter. Like we should support Rand Paul and Justin Amash. You should support Gary Johnson. Take liberty where you can get it, even if it's not
multi-front war.
Right. And find the thing that you're good at. Dustin is coming on my podcast and shitting on Gary Johnson. I'm good at shitting on Dustin, so no.
And I'd have to say that this is by far the most time I've spent arguing about Gary Johnson.
Yeah.
I don't do it, frankly.
Comes on a podcast, gets criticized for criticizing Gary, and he had to criticize Gary.
I'm not criticizing
Dustin.
Dustin.
The libertarians.
Only when you ask, do I criticize Gary Johnson?
He doesn't.
Mostly, I'm apathetic, or I have an opinion, but I don't bother. Arguing
he doesn't spend his night shit posting Gary.
Yeah, I don't
on internet forums.
No, I could see it in your eyes when I asked you the other day. I was like, I've got one. I need to come on the podcast because he thinks. But yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the rando libertarian out there. I'm just saying, listen, stop the circle jerk. So, like to me, like I used to like I'm not necessarily a fan of the Pauls. Okay. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of Ron.
That'd be a bit of an understatement.
No, I'm not a huge fan. I'm a fan. I'm a libertarian because of Ron Paul, in part. But I don't like deity status with anyone except myself. I don't like when somebody rises to the level that you can no longer speak ill of them. That's when I want to start tearing you down.
Like Gary Johnson?
Right. No, because I totally understand the criticism.
I just thought it. I didn't even speak it. I thought it, and you said you saw it in my eyes.
I did. I saw it. I could see it.
Stop worshiping Gary.
I'm not worshiping Gary. I just.
I really wish Chris would quit praying to the Johnson.
Also, feel the Johnson memes. I don't think are.
He hates him,
and I don't think it helps.
I think it helps huge.
I don't think it does.
You don't know who you support until you felt the Johnson.
Have you ever felt the Johnson?
I have seen the Liberty Movement just whipped out its Johnson as well.
Yeah, I just don't think that helps necessarily.
And Dustin didn't like it because it's not a Liberty Johnson.
Listen,
that's true.
Gary's basically saying he's forcing you to touch his Johnson. Touch the Johnson, bake the Johnson.
That Johnson is too moderate.
I'm just trying to say, and not to Dustin, but in general, like you have to realize your friends and family are not in your echo chamber, and they care about issues. And Johnson's going to be more with them than you are. So at least as the libertarian guy, quit the circle jerking. Like
party guy, the libertarian.
No,
party guy.
I never ever in 2012 did I once ever shit on Ron Paul, like ever. Like it just because it's like.
And Ron doesn't shit on Gary either, though.
He just doesn't endorse him.
Keeps asking, like especially Kennedy. Yeah. Kennedy in 2012 and 2016.
Yeah,
is just constantly. Are you ready to endorse Gary Johnson?
Yeah. Please like me. Please like him.
No, I
feel that Johnson. Ron.
He's not out there trashing him. He even speaks relatively well of him.
There is something weird there though.
It's fundamental in the types of individuals they are.
Yeah, I think so.
There is a West Texas good old boy that became a libertarian, and there is a New Age peace flower dandelion army guy of the left that became a libertarian in Gary Johnson that like embraces the metaphysical and crystals in Santa Fe, and they will never meet and hang out. It's true. It is fundamental at who they are.
He was a Republican.
I know, he was a Republican in name only. Governor veto was only possible because they had a line item veto. Gary would never be able to be a libertarian or Can you look at William Weld? He lived in Massachusetts. They didn't have the luxury of a line item veto, and people were like, "Why are we nominating a guy to the right of Mitt Romney, or to the statist, more statist than Mitt Romney?" Gary had the luxury of a line item veto in a state that gave it to him, and he didn't care about social issues, and he only cared about getting the budget fixed and school choice, and he did because he had that luxury. If Gary had been in Massachusetts and Weld had been in New Mexico, people would be like, Gary Johnson's a Democrat. Did the Libertarians just nominate a Democrat? Look how feels he is. Like, oh my God, he's trying to sell us some gypsy tears.
No, see, this is I don't I get that. I would not say that Gary does not communicate strength. Okay, I think that Gary is a very strong individual. I think that he's an emotionally healthy individual. He is an admirable individual. But he does not communicate strength. Donald Trump is the exact opposite.
He's a warrior.
The guy communicates strength, and he comes across as this warrior and winner, but he's an emotional midget.
Gary shows up and
integrity.
says, "This is what I believe, please like me, and here's how it kind of fits what you like." We'll have a bumper sticker.
One thing that I thought was interesting, did you guys watch the libertarian debates among the libertarian candidates? I thought it was interesting. So going back to 2012, a lot of people called Gary a one-issue candidate, focusing a lot on marijuana. And he mentioned that he was a libertarian in '84 when he first voted libertarian, and that he said it was because Reagan blew the lid off of spending. But with Gary's background, I had to wonder if it had to do something with Reagan's war on drugs and not spending so much.
Either way.
I mean, Ronald Reagan, you're a victim of the situation that you're elected in or a part of. Like, Ronald Reagan didn't write the budget code that said that there was a mandatory 8% annual increase to the budget when he took office, and he wasn't going to shut down government and lose re-election over that. He was going to pass the tax cuts, allow the deficit to happen, and hope that we could grow out of it. Like, you don't get to dictate circumstances, but Gary kind of did. Gary was in New Mexico. He could line item veto with no one else being able to tell him, no, we're not spending money on this. He could cherry pick a budget. Like, it's really easy to be fiscally conservative when you get to just take and strike a line through whatever you don't want to spend money to. And then social issues weren't his thing. But Gary was effective at government, completely fixed the New Mexico budget situation and turned it into a flourishing state and stimulated growth and fixed their school system and really inspired a lot of confidence in a new kind of Republican where, American Conservative or New Conservative Magazine wrote about him as a new age Republican back in 2011. Right. I mean, the guy was a rock star, a rising star. The first debate he was in as a Republican in 2012 has the best line. My dog has created more shovel-ready jobs than the stimulus bill. I mean, Gary is a Republican because that's the party he was elected by that supported him and put resources into his reelection. But he's always probably been a libertarian, but he's a drug libertarian. Marijuana decriminalization and legalization is his hot button issue, and you can see it every time he gets involved.
Yeah, he became animated and passionate on that answer.
He is a single issue, like he was created. The drug war is his big thing. That's his hot button.
And mine too.
Yep.
My eyes glass over every time we talk about Austrian economics on this show.
And we really don't talk Austrian economics ever. Like, I mean, we don't go into the deep, the thickets.
Sorry, Dustin.
You're going to say it was boring.
It is. It's boring as shit.
Oh.
I don't care. Like, that's why Greg and Creighton are on this podcast, because they like economics, they talk it, they understand it.
Well, I'm for memes.
Well, yeah.
Creighton's for Austrian economics.
Like, I find economics to be completely boring. I care about...
And 90% of the American public agrees.
I care about ending the drug war, reforming criminal justice. I care about ending wars. Like, I care a lot more about left issues
Human
than I do
impact.
right. Yeah.
Well, I think economics is...
They don't understand that's the foundation.
I think, it's the key to understanding how to create progress. And I I progress is what people are interested in.
But preaching that to them is like force feeding them broccoli and saying, why aren't you free?
And this is where are you an INTJ?
Feel it. I don't remember. I did that a couple times. I think I got different results each time.
Yeah, but you're definitely in the INTJ. You're like that. Like, I'm getting that vibe. Like, to me,
he basically just called you autistic.
No. He's very socially graceful.
I'm just kidding.
No, like, I want to end war because I hate when people's families die.
I get the broken window fallacy. I get that it's bad economically. I get the destruction of life and property.
No, that isn't good economically. Austrian economics says the broken window fallacy is a fallacy. The money that you created, the money spent, was money lost.
I'm saying that whatever. I'm saying that the destruction of life and property and the
is terrible for liberty.
And end of progress is bad for liberty.
It's
bad for, that the underpinning economic situation of war is bad. Okay?
Every time. It's money lost.
Right. It's not the myth that like World War II stimulated the 50s.
And
that's bullshit.
Pulled us out of the Great Depression.
Right. That's all bullshit. It extended it, if anything. But that's not why I'm anti-war. I'm anti-war because I feel it emotionally. Like that's where Mary Ruart's book, Healing Our World, connected to me in a different way because I look at it and I go, oh, wow, like there's feels in liberty. And like this is where I drive Greg and all my other libertarian friends.
You don't drive me crazy. I get it. It's just not what appeals to me because it's not as logical or rational.
Right. Like, and so libertarians forever have been ruled by the Mises Institute.
Rothbard, Hoppe.
Right. And you're losing a whole swath of people that just don't connect to any of that.
Well, Healing Our World actually completed the picture for me because it kind of taught me that, what is right logically is right emotionally.
Sure.
Yeah. It
filled in the gaps
shift.
and gave you the ability to sell libertarianism. Like, that's the thing that book does.
Yeah.
It allows you to sell libertarianism to someone that has no idea what the fatal conceit is or what an axiom, a priori axiom is. It says, listen, and I hope to God, this is what I fear most. It's what I said the other day in chat. The Libertarian Party has been an economic-focused individual liberty based upon self-support and your ability to live as an individual without interference economically. This is the first time there's been a candidate that sells it differently. This is the first time there's been a candidate that sells it as identity politics, coalition building, and reaching out to people who would otherwise support a Bernie Sanders or a more empathetic type of political messaging.
And you mean Gary?
Right. And that's fine, and it's great because I don't think that's necessarily the wrong way to go. I really don't. I think that in this election there are more disillusioned Republicans and disillusioned Democrats that will look for an alternative and vote that way. But I don't think that long run, Gary's messaging is wrong. I think it's probably right. The worry is, let's say you get a bunch of people from the left. Then it's a matchup of Bernie Sanders, Gary Johnson, and Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan, a guy that came up in the Bastiat Society, very well spoken, or Ted Cruz even. Except on social issues, extremely libertarian.
Yeah.
Or constitutionalist or whatever.
He's a total war hawk.
Yeah, I mean, he is when he needs to win a Republican primary.
If you want to say that, like I believe that to be libertarian, you have to be non-interventionist.
Right.
Like, to me, I think that's a foundational principle. But there are people that think that that's not an essential.
But for Gary justifies intervention in the Darfur for for the slaughtering of humanitarian purposes.
Right. He does it on a moral stance.
And I don't think he's wrong.
I mean, who doesn't?
Right.
Who wouldn't? And
who doesn't justify their position on war on a moral stance?
Sure.
And I don't necessarily think Gary's wrong, but here's my issue: is long run in an election where the Democrat Party is now, for all intents and purposes, the Social Democrat Party that exists in Europe. The Libertarians, in a matchup of a Bernie Sanders, Gary Johnson, and let's say Rand Paul, we don't even break 2%. Because the left libertarians, like Brad Lowry, that's a good friend of ours, are all going to fall victim to the appeal of the left. And, this is our chance at real change. This is our chance to really be on the inside.
Sure.
Just like people on the right tend to when it was Ron running for the GOP nomination. This is our chance.
I can change it from the inside.
So we're perpetually stuck in a place if we don't create real libertarians that actually know it, and we don't have a long enough time frame to ingrain it. And it's just, I'm voting for Gary because in Trump versus Hillary, he's the one that's the most like Bernie and anti-corruption.
Right.
It's a long-term play that I think ends poorly for us because we end up cutting off our nose to spite our face.
Sure.
Politically.
I also think that there's, and this is connected but not, I also think there's something about like my dad, for instance, or my brother saying, I'm going to vote for Gary Johnson. And then I immediately say something negative, like, oh, that guy's not libertarian. Like that immediately, I've closed a gap. I've lost the ability to communicate those principles though. You
don't speak Republican anymore.
Right.
It's not your thing.
No. I've always been a third party person, 100%. But I also think that it comes down to having an optimistic outlook. You know, you have to offer a vision to the world that is different, and I totally understand Dustin's point of view that, like, Gary Johnson doesn't offer me a vision of the world that is all that different. It is a progression downward, but it's not different.
It's like a short-term diet.
Right. My problem with Ron Paul and a lot of the Austrian crowd and more of my economic focused friends is that a lot of times there isn't an optimistic view attached with that. That's where I do like Gary Johnson, where it is more of it's more. He awkwardly tried to be optimistic by shouting optimism last night, which I thought was very libertarian.
Oh, so cringy. It was like an Aspie screaming, like keeping in a chant, and then he couldn't take it any longer, and it burst out.
But I do want that. I don't. You know, hope and change must go together. You can't talk about change without giving hope, and that's where libertarians for a long time have failed. Is that you know, we
don't have hope to start with.
We don't have hope. We're all dead inside and just full of memes.
Well, I think that the hardcore libertarian vision is the most optimistic.
Absolutely.
Because it's not, here's my vision for the future, here's what I have planned for your life.
Right.
It's, you know, you get to live your life however you wish, as long as you don't hurt anyone or don't hurt people, don't take their stuff.
The problem is we don't present it that way, though.
Yeah,
right. We choose it as the markets are all going to come crashing down. We're going to burn. It's happening soon. You know, we present it as like be a prepper. You know, and Ron Paul goes out and sells food insurance on Glenn Beck. You know, and Glenn Beck tells, prepare your family. You know, and these are the people that most people. These are the highest profile libertarians. You know, Glenn Beck is libertarian-ish. Ron Paul is libertarian.
Like William Weld's libertarian-ish.
Glenn Beck's more libertarian than William Weld. But you see what I'm saying? Like that's like I at least admire someone for trying a different approach for once, as opposed to we're all fucked, and then on the other side it'll be fine. It's like I just look at black and yellow Facebook pages, or Austrian, like my friends who are ANCAPs, and I'm like, how do you live with such despair? Like memes. I know I live in
memes.
I live in despair, but like you seem more sad.
Well, then who's going to be the candidate of you get to live your life? I thought Ron Paul was that candidate, and if that didn't appeal to people, then, or maybe you didn't hear it, but
he was, but I don't think that he was as an effective messenger as he could be. I think he popped up at a moment when people were so hungry for the libertarian message that it came across. I feel
like that's wrong because the guy was alone for so long chanting in the wilderness. He was on William F. Buckley's The Firing Line in 1988 for 4 segments talking about libertarianism, and no one knew what the hell it was other than Reagan said that's what conservatism was based upon in a Wallace with Chris Wallace's dad in like 76. Like that word hadn't been uttered in that 12-year gap. And he shouted. And he was a kook, and he was a novelty, and then all of a sudden he wasn't threatening because he was old and kind of crazy. But he's not going to win. What the hell? Let's send the Fed.
He flirts. Woo! He flirts with truthers. He flirts with the Alex Jones crowd. He flirts with the prepper crowd.
He will promote himself on any avenue that gives him access.
Sure. I think a greater one is coming with whom Ron Paul is not fit to carry his sandals. Like I do think that Austin has great appeal. If Austin can ascend to project the kind of integrity that I think that Gary Johnson has, I think there isn't a person. You never see anybody like say bad things about the person Gary Johnson. They stay to his ideas. Gary Johnson. The pistol thing aside, like with the
and that was so irrelevant, it doesn't even merit discussion.
Literally, in the 4 years that I've been around and in the libertarian movement and around Gary Johnson, that's the only time I've ever heard anybody say anything bad about him. And I'm not saying that like Austin is not an integral person or whatever, because I just don't know him. But you do see people like he picks fights with people.
Austin is if the person that is going to become disillusioned with the Liberty Caucus and Rand Paul and Massey endorsing Trump and those guys.
Yeah.
Austin is ripe to pull them in and say, listen, I speak your language and I represent you and this is what I believe and so do you. I'm just in a different party. try something different.
Well, here's the thing. Like, Austin speaks to a me and he speaks to a Dustin. And that I don't see.
But he isn't positive. He's principled.
But he can get there because he's young.
He's a troll. How often do trolls go from telling people how they're wrong to this is where the world should go and this speaks to feels?
You're right.
The difference,
Because we can't do that.
it's not there yet.
It's not,
the difference
that's
is
not us.
libertarians are on the stage for the first time.
Right.
So it's scarcity. It's like, how I always talk about Tommy Boy when he, once he's making that illustration where he's grabbing the biscuit and he's like, so I finally get there and I love it. I touch my little pet and I squeeze it to death and he tears it apart. That's where we are right now. We're so angsty and so in the moment. It's like, oh my God, we didn't do Rothbard right. We didn't explain human action and a priori axioms on CNN to Anderson Cooper. It's all over.
I'd like to point out that Greg uses that exact same example about my love life.
Because selling yourself is the same across any avenue. Selling yourself is the exact same in American politics as it is dating. When you are selling yourself, if you come across as angsty desperate, you are going to be rejected before day one even begins.
Yeah.
If you come off as you're sitting there, if Gary Johnson looked at Anderson Cooper and Anderson Cooper said, listen, libertarian, you've taken a lot of heat because you have... Can people deny others based upon their religious beliefs? Do you think that's right? Instead of Gary waffling, wavering, and not just saying what he said, what he really believes, Gary really does believe, yes, voluntary association is the right way to go. Politically, it's toxic, and we can't go around saying that the colored guy can't sit at the bar at the Kentucky diner because we're going to lose votes. But Gary's a politician. If instead Gary had said, you know what, Anderson? To tell you the truth, the libertarian position is this. I shouldn't be able to even answer that question because government has no role. And what do you think? Libertarians have to start turning it around on the others. We keep trying to present what we are in a succinct, compelling way, and we try to win internet arguments by just floods of text. Whereas if you would just say, listen, the reality is, what does a libertarian believe? As long as it doesn't affect me, what do you want? Describe to me what you want. If you vote libertarian, that's what you get.
But see, by saying you can be a libertarian by describing what you want, Dustin will stand behind you and go, he's not libertarian.
No, he would say that's exactly what it is because it's voluntary association. If you tell me what you want, and as long as it doesn't hurt me in any way, my property, or it doesn't infringe upon my rights to what I want, you're free to choose. So before you even begin asking what I think, let me ask you this. Describe to me your ideal society. What would the ideal world look like to you? And if we start putting the message back on voters, we're going to start winning because that's the key to sales. Describe your needs, describe then what our product offers, and see if there's a match, and you'll create voters. But don't try to rush into it and be like, oh my God, 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 I'm a libertarian, what do libertarians believe? Oh my God, the NAP, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Ron Paul, racist letters, oh my God. It isn't going to work 'cause it feels angsty and inauthentic.
Yeah.
We just keep thinking it's about us, and it isn't. It's about the voter.
But that's exactly what I'm saying, is spend the next 100 days making it about the voter. Like, if you're in Dustin's position and you don't want to promote Gary, don't. I don't have any problem with that. But like, don't be
and Dustin isn't. To his credit.
And he's not. He is only talking shit about Gary because I asked him to come on.
In true libertarian fashion, you provoked him to the point he only had one option to talk shit about Gary.
Right. I think I'm just saying, like, libertarians have to get better at not shooting themselves in the foot.
There's going to be a big crowd that don't accept political change as the right avenue. And that's what people in the Libertarian Party have to accept.
I get that.
And you can't get mad at them when they criticize.
But I'm not getting mad. I'm saying...
It perturbs you.
I think it's dumb. I think that if
it's counterproductive.
I think that, yes, I think that my beef is that if Ron Paul... I voted for Ron Paul in 2012. If Ron Paul were on the ballot, I'd vote for Ron Paul. If Rand Paul were the candidate, I'd vote for Rand Paul.
I think you would have some serious issues with that. You don't like him on a personal level.
I don't like him for the reasons that Ron and Dustin don't like Gary. I think he's wishy-washy. Whereas
put your foot in a camp and pick.
Whereas I see Gary, I see what Gary's doing. I understand Gary. I understand that Rand is doing it the same, but then like all his sycophants, oh, he's the most principled person ever. It's like, shut the fuck up. No, he's not.
You hate the fan, not the person.
That's exactly right.
That's the way I feel about Butler basketball. I hate Butler basketball fans because they think they're elite and they almost never won 2 national titles, even though they love to tell you about the time they went and lost.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I love watching Butler basketball.
Right. It's exactly right.
I hate the fanboy. I love the person.
And the reason that Creighton and I Creighton irritates the shit out of me with this. Because Creighton is anti-LP.
Yep.
And if you're not pro-Rand, pro-Republican Liberty Caucus, whereas I look at it and I go, listen, dude, I have a different experience with the Republican Party and its effectiveness and the ability to change it from the inside, and I watched it in 2008 and 2012. I saw them change everything. We saw what happened to Bernie. Like, that doesn't work. That's ineffective. You're wasting your time. But listen, if Justin Amash can be effective, awesome. I'm for it. Like, I'm a Libertarian Party guy. I'm going to vote majority Libertarian because they closely identify with my politics.
They are Libertarian. Rand Paul is, at his philosophical foundation, a Libertarian. In practice, he is a constitutional Republican.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Amash is the same. Thomas Massey's the same. Mike Lee's the same. That's just the way it is. They're believers in political change, which is funny because so are you.
Yes. I just believe in a different avenue. I'm saying take it where you can get it. If that's what you believe, I don't agree that that's the right place to put my energy. But if you do, then do it. Fine. Those people don't have the same mindset. There's a condescension amongst the Austrian economic crowd, the Misesians, and the Ron Paul
beautiful.
people.
The Misesians.
That is irritating.
They're pedantic lecturers.
Yes.
Know-it-alls.
There is, and I'm not saying Dustin, but there is a condescension amongst... When Creighton talks to me about, Gary Johnson, blah, 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 he's very condescending about it, and it irritates me, and I will fight him.
But that's the point, though, is that you got to remember to separate your anger, because this is what no one ever can.
I'm not actually mad at him.
No,
but that's what I'm saying.
It influences your voting behavior, because whenever someone does that, it just makes you even more certain the LP is the only avenue, and they're an idiot on a fool's errand.
Because if I'm going to go join the Republican Party, these are the people that I've got to be around, and I don't want to be around somebody who's condescending and negative, and then only talks about shit I don't care about.
Which is funny, because if you go back and listen to all our episodes, me and you are the biggest advocates in the world for all they are is vessels.
Mm-hmm. A political party is just an empty vessel made up of people,
and yet we hate someone because they're a member of one.
I don't
even
hate
though it's an empty vessel. We hate the
no.
inhabitants.
I don't hate anybody. I just want people to stop annoying me, and maybe that's a
forcibly.
Maybe that's a me problem. But do you understand what I'm saying, Dustin? Like, it's like I don't have a problem with Ron Paul. I do think that there are certain, like, I don't think he is allowed deity status. I look at him like another politician. Like, to me, he's below like a Cato person because he's a politician. Like, he's not libertarian Jesus. And so the people who try to force...
Even though he converted you to libertarianism like Jesus.
No. The person who really converted me was Andy Horning and Abdul. But Ron Paul had an influence.
You saw the cross and you went towards it.
I'm just saying, like, the reason that there's a condescension, and I can understand why people on the other side would go, well, Libertarian Party people are this way.
Oh, yes, they are.
Yeah, absolutely.
They dance on stage naked despite their ability to finally arrive on the national stage at C-SPAN.
Yeah, no.
Party members and party leaders.
You and I have experienced a lot of bullshit at the hands of the Libertarian Party.
We were told to shut up about our criticisms because people were watching. When,
in fact, we were trying to give everybody the full information, and that was not acceptable.
No, but we were criticizing, and people were watching and out looking from the outside to get information.
And so I just look at it and I go, you know what? Political change is all about conforming to other people, to the group opinion. And as an individualist, I just go, I'm not about that, And at the end of the day, like, I'm a libertarian person. I'm not a Republican guy.
Libertarian.
Yep. I'm going to vote LP. Our Gary Johnson podcast is promoting Gary Johnson. It's like the Gary Johnson for President podcast is now bigger than We Are Libertarians.
The Johnson is growing.
The Johnson is huge.
It's erect, you might say.
Raw Audio Politics, that podcast is huge. We've got a ton of stuff in there. But I just don't get why, like, people just can't, like,
Get on board.
No, just like stop.
Get on the train.
Now stop nitpicking other libertarians. You know, like just ease the fuck up, right?
Well, that's the point. Is we thrive on being right, not being happy.
Yeah.
It's more important to libertarians because it's a dick measuring thing of purity.
Right.
We need to be right, despite now being completely alone, alienating everybody we spend time with, and being stunned they just stop inviting us to things.
I also look at something like last night, and I think the libertarian reflex is to watch a town hall. They're so used to seeing a Republican Democrat and criticizing it that the way that we watch certain events like that is to nitpick and to bitch. And
That's how you stand out and get
Right.
more libertarian street cred.
Right.
Well, so-and-so said on a Facebook comment, and it was really quite fascinating and profound. It's not the way the world works. No one's watching.
Right. So I threw it to Dustin like minutes ago, and then I ranted some more.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Go ahead. You talk now. I'm
Okay,
tired.
yeah, you mentioned a lot, Ron Paul's so-called deity status. I think a lot of people feel like they owe him a personal debt because he's been this great philosophical teacher for them personally.
Sure.
So I think he's more like, a teacher. He's even said himself that he didn't come up with these grand ideas. He's just been effective at communicating and passing them on to other people. That's what a teacher does.
Right.
And people hold him, in high regard because it had such a personal impact for them. That's how I feel about it. And then as far as, we keep coming back to voting for Gary Johnson and whatnot. And I guess just don't tell me that I'm wasting my vote not voting for that.
I don't.
office.
I think I think it's a missed opportunity, but I think if that's your conscience, then that's what you should do.
Your criticism is don't condemn Gary publicly because other people are desperately looking for an alternative.
I'm saying try to be positive about the libertarian movement and not, like
Think about what you just said and the paradox.
Did you criticize Mitt Romney 4 years ago?
Mittens?
a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at how I talk about about Donald Trump, right? But the time for like Austin Peterson's not the nominee.
It's not time.
Rob Paul's not running. Like now is not the time to. People want an alternative. People are now paying attention. So like talking about the same shit that we talked about 6 months ago is pointless.
Show up and vote and accept it and be quiet, or stay home and shut up.
Or promote an idea that you do care about. Promote like the advocates for self-government, or promote
That's Brett
AFF
Benner's
events.
associated with that. I'll never support it.
Yeah, you're right. Promote AFF events, or promote We Are Libertarians, or promote things that you like.
That's actually a really good point. I think people do. It's almost like whenever they vote against a candidate,
Right.
they don't want that other person to be president, so they vote for the lesser of two evils, and they also condemn the things that they dislike or they're disappointed in. I've taken a different approach, as you pointed out, that I kind of disconnected from it. I don't care so much, and I'm still involved with America's Future Foundation. Mm-hmm. I have everybody should have a private life to focus on. Frankly, that's kind of what libertarianism's about, right? Having a private life to focus on instead of worrying about
It's all private until it infringes on somebody else.
Yeah. So that's what people should do. Not vote for Gary Johnson or vote for this or that, or not vote for whoever.
Right.
But do whatever they feel is positive in their life.
You have limited space in the algorithm of Facebook. Use it positively. I guess it only took us 2 hours for me to finally get to what I want to say, which is like just use it positively. Like libertarianism.org or libertarianism.com, or like We Are Libertarians, or The Path to Libertarianism on We Are Libertarians, which is the greatest explanation of libertarianism that exists. There is no
Did
other.
Brett Bittner make that?
No, there's a website out there
Who made
that called The Path to Libertarianism that is the greatest explanation of libertarianism. Nothing is better. I have all the greatest explanations
People tell you
all the time.
all the time.
I play golf with Brett Bittner. His drive is very sad.
It's very short. And to the left, really. I wouldn't have expected that.
Just use your space to, and when you don't post like a 3-hour audiobook of For a New Liberty. Like, your grandma's not going to watch that shit. Like, go find the 2-minute video that explains what a libertarian is. People want to know what a libertarian is right now. And if you're the libertarian guy in your friend circle, use the time wisely. Don't use it on Circle Jerk that just like gets you into flame wars on the internet.
And the principles of liberty can be applied to anything. They're so, overarching.
Do unto others as you would have do unto you.
All right, talk about the issue. That's what we do. We talk about the current events in the news. So
you want to beat ISIS?
Right.
Protect your home?
Right.
And they'll go away.
Right. Okay, so this Khan thing. So the Clintons finally had a win.
The Democratic National Convention invited Kaiser Khan to come on and give a speech about life as a Muslim American patriot in the United States. Kaiser Khan's son, Humak, Huma, I think R, or could not. Other way.
I was going to make a Trump joke.
How racist. All those Muslim names are the same. They tell me this. No, so his son was in Iraq as a captain in 2004 in the Army and died in service. And his parents were given a Yellow Heart for losing a loved one. And in the speech, though, Kaiser Khan decided to say that in Donald Trump's America, we would not be here. Mm-hmm. We would be banned.
My son who sacrificed his life wouldn't have been able to come to America.
For country. He fled there. He and his wife fled from Pakistan. I believe it was after, who was it? So Benazir Bhutto, who died a couple years ago, the daughter was killed by, her dad was a dictator. Mm-hmm. He was killed by Zia al-Haq, who, if you've ever seen Charlie Wilson's War, is the person that Charlie Wilson invites to Houston and hosts a fundraiser for him in his name. But so they flee during a revolution, come to the United States. He gets his degree at Punjabi University undergrad, graduates from Harvard Law School, sets up a law practice, works with immigration law and that kind of thing currently in New York. And his wife is on stage with him and remains silent. He criticizes Trump. Trump goes to respond on George Stephanopoulos this week. And Trump says, listen, I wish him the best of luck. I understand his wife. She doesn't say anything. I'm not sure why she doesn't say anything. People tell me that she's not saying something for a reason. People tell me this all the time.
She can't. She's not allowed to speak.
Making the allegation without making the allegation. Basically trying to court the power, the feministas, and say that, are you really going to vote for the candidate that was promoting the silence of women by husbands? That was the intent behind the argument. It blew up in his face because then it turned into basically a shitposting contest in the media where Donald Trump lost for the first time in a while on a universal stage, even among his supporters. He lost because he came across as, rather than the racist you can defend, because at the end of the day it's about keeping America safe from ISIS, the guy that still hates Muslims because regardless of a person's death, in Iraq, he still can't even support a Muslim. And so it was egg on his face, and it blew out of proportion because then the wife, who didn't speak, writes an op-ed for the Washington Post where she comes out and flat out says, I didn't speak because after seeing my son's picture on the Democratic National stage while we were walking up, I was too choked up and wasn't able to talk about it.
Sure.
And Trump just looks like the worst person imaginable.
He looks like an uncaring dick to the very people that he's supposed to be, the military families, the Gold Star moms, they're booing.
He fell into the trap of what they've been trying to paint him as.
Yeah, because Hillary Clinton, one of the most important lines in her speech is that we can't trust a man with the nuclear codes with a man who can be baited by a tweet. And that very night, they baited him with a Muslim father, and he fell for it. And now, they're booing Gold Star moms at Mike Pence rallies. Mike Pence is having to distance himself from his own.
Every Republican is distancing themselves right now. Everybody's running
because they should. And now they're talking about what happens if he quit.
He won't quit. His ego won't let him.
Yeah.
Quits the race?
Yeah, Donald Trump will never quit.
You're saying that. I haven't heard that.
No, that's something that there's strategery meetings in the Republican Party in case he
gets the people that are on the outside.
Well, it's if he gets in a huff and he quits.
Yeah, which he will not because he doesn't quit. The guy publicly filed bankruptcy with 4 of his companies and at one point was personally in debt, close to $1 billion, or his companies were. I mean, almost, but when they didn't get the licenses in Atlantic City for his casinos and the Trump Taj Mahal had to be theoretically torn down, which is just, again, they talked about tearing it down even though it's never opened because they didn't get the licenses. But Donald Trump will not quit, and Donald Trump does shame. He is shame. He has no shame. He's failed in every way publicly on on national news. He has said the most egregious things that anyone can possibly say. He has said the most offensive things to the American electorate that you pretty much can, and he's run the opposite of a political campaign in every way, shape, and form. And at the end of the day, he's still there. And so I don't know. Yes, it will temper Republican support because they're going to be grossed out by it. But in today's world where media changes in a week, they don't want to say that, yes, I'm voting for Donald Trump when they go meet with their friends at church on Sunday in the narthex having coffee.
Right.
But at the end of the day, in 7 days, this will be gone. Donald Trump will do something or say something, and Hillary will make a mistake, or Hillary won't condemn something enough and offer him an opening, and we'll see his numbers go back up. Because that's what he does, because he's always in the press. After the Libertarian Town Hall debate, it was 2 hours about Donald Trump. 2 solid hours of analysis, not about the Libertarian Town Hall, about Donald J. Trump that he didn't have to pay for.
Yeah, people love the controversy of it. And I don't think these comments that he made recently are nearly...
Oh, they got blown out of proportion.
I don't think
he wished the guy luck.
I don't think they're nearly as concerning about a lot of the things that he said.
Yeah.
Like, especially, was it banning new Muslims coming in or getting rid of the Muslims that are here?
The refugees.
Yeah, like...
It wasn't internment camps like the liberal icon FDR.
I mean,
they didn't round them up.
It's effectively having a political test to be in the religious test to be in the United States, right?
It's background checks, extremely intense background checks to make sure that they don't have any connection with anyone possibly associated with ISIS. Granted, that test you're never going to pass anyway. If you go to a mosque and attend, there's going to be someone somewhere that has a connection somewhere. I mean, down the line. That's an impassable. It's Jim Crow,
Yeah, he's a hot mess. I want to read this from Donnie Ferguson. Donnie used to work as the communications director for the LP. He's worked for a ton of Republicans, a ton of Libertarians, all over the political spectrum. Donnie writes, up by double digits nationally, the Clinton campaign just pulled its ads from Colorado and Virginia. They're pouring that money into light red states like Arizona to run up the score, Colorado and Virginia being swing states. That means not only Clinton is going to win in traditionally Republican states, Democrats are going to slash into Republican majority states like Texas, which has been on the brink. The Trump campaign, meanwhile, has less money to spend on ads than some state Senate races. In must-win states like Ohio, they don't even have a staff, and voting starts in about 60 days. Some polling out from CNN today. It is August 4th, 2016. CNN writes, Donald Trump's path to 270 electoral votes runs through the Rust Belt and the upper Midwest, including some states that have been reliably Democratic in past elections. Pennsylvania hasn't gone Republican since 1988. In that race, Hillary Clinton is 47%, Trump 34%, Johnson 7%, Stein at 3%. Clinton-Trump split Pennsylvania white vote. Whites with high school or less, Trump is at 53%, Clinton to 31%. College-educated whites, Clinton 58%, Trump 28%. If you look at, let's go to another state, could Trump win Michigan? Trump's campaign wants to put Michigan and its 16 electoral votes in play. New polling gives the edge to Clinton at 41%, Trump at 31%, Johnson at 7.5%, Stein at 3.4%. One third of Michigan Republicans say they won't back Trump. Additionally, more than half of the state's voters say the Republican nominee is ill-prepared to be commander-in-chief at 61%. No Republican has ever won the presidency without Ohio. New polling has Clinton at 38, Trump at 36, Johnson at 8, Stein at 3 in the four-way race, according to Quinnipiac.
Did you look at the research methodology?
Let's see here.
Can you click on the link?
971 Ohio voters.
Did they show you the makeup?
No.
You should look at the makeup on those polls.
Okay, why?
They're oversampling Democrats 2-1.
Really? Why would they do that?
Because they're basing it on a 2012 voter turnout model. If you look at the expectation, Republican turnout is right now on pace to break all the records. First-time registrants and enthusiasm's never been higher. Trump has the most Republican votes in the history of primaries. The danger of Hillary Clinton's strategy is thinking that this is going to be an election where people are because they don't like Donald Trump, they're going to pull the trigger for her. It's not going to be what happens. It's going to be, I'm going to stay home because I have no one to vote for. In a race like that, it becomes getting out your base. The group with the enthusiasm in a change election is the group that wins every time. Donald Trump will win Ohio because if they're oversampling Democrats nearly 2-1, the reality is Donald Trump probably has a hypothetical lead. He'll win Pennsylvania, I think. He will win Virginia because Hillary has taken an egregious stance against coal, which will be the same reason he'll win Pennsylvania and Ohio. And the only real test will be North Carolina. If Donald Trump doesn't win New Hampshire, North Carolina, he can't win the election.
Sure.
If he does, he wins the whole thing. He loses the West. This was the last-ditch effort at the industrial Midwest white voter. This is the last election that will ever look this way.
Sure.
He has to rewrite it, and he has to speak to people who really remember the 1950s and still vote and go to Lincoln GOP Day dinners.
Right.
And so if he does, he'll win rural North Carolina. He'll win Western Virginia, like the Blacksburg area. He won't win the D.C. Beltway. And he will win Florida because of his universal popularity. And I don't know why, but he beat the hell out of Marco Rubio, and Rubio got 2%. And they spent $35 million in a primary against him. But like the polling research methodology is so wrong on this, it's incredible. It's why Bernie Sanders was 20 points down the day before the Michigan Democratic primary and won.
Right.
Well, I think the collectivists might be ripe for...
he is a collective.
Well, okay, but like we were talking about the left and the right.
Yeah.
And I think the left is going to be a lot more willing to, swallow that bitter pill and vote for Hillary than the right is to vote for Trump. And I'm looking at electionbettingodds.com, and it's 76% Hillary, 21.5% Trump, and that's huge. That's huge.
He was only at 5% to win the GOP nomination by Nate Silver.
When, though?
All the way like in July.
Like last year or
this year?
When was the convention?
In August? Or I'm sorry, in June. It was in June, but at the beginning of June, Nate Silver had to come out and apologize for his model not accounting for enough people, new registrants. That's the problem everyone's using is a 2012 with slight increases across demographics, heavily more weighted towards Hispanics and more weighted towards African Americans. Two things are happening, though. He has a higher percent of white voters than anyone has ever seen in any election model over the age of 45.
Sure.
It's never happened.
The model I'm looking at is a prediction market. So
yeah, and it could be.
People are using all kinds of different models. And
they are. I'm just saying, like, if you're the problem with the polling of Quinnipiac, Washington Post, CBS, Real Clear Politics, they're just doing a slight increase across the demographics with a skew of less white people and more Hispanics at a slight increase, I think, of like from 5% to 7%, and then African Americans from 1 to 3. The reality is Donald Trump isn't going to get any Hispanic votes.
No. But he loves Hispanics.
But he gets more white men than any Republican that's ever ran.
Right.
Probably since, Ronald Reagan. That's the difference. And so this is the last election that can be won by the white male voter, but it still can be won. And that's his bet.
See, Dustin, it's your duty to vote for the white. Never mind.
But I mean, no, like...
I don't know. I guess Gary Johnson would split the white male vote, wouldn't he?
No way. No factory working white male watches Gary Johnson and says, that gives a shiver up my leg.
Did with my dad.
No, he just doesn't want to vote for the Republican nominee. Because if the Republican nominee were Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush, your dad would be voting for him and saying that we can't have another Clinton.
Yeah.
And so that's the mistake of libertarians would be to mistake momentum and protest votes. And right now, polling, a lot of people think we're going to get 5%. I think it can be done, but I don't think we've made that case yet. Trump has to keep falling.
Yeah.
Because right now there are probably 2.5 million people who would identify as libertarian-ish in the United States. Maybe 2.5 million of that. I think you'd probably guess 1.75 to 2 million will actually vote. And then you're betting that there's an additional 2.5 million to 3 million that are going to in the booth. That if it's a close matchup, I don't think they pull the trigger for Gary at all.
And it'll get closer.
It will
when it comes
at
to
this
the
point. Mitt Romney
time.
Was leading Barack Obama. He had just whooped him in the first debate. But that's the point, though. Isn't the worst thing for libertarians and the libertarian candidates is a close election. If Trump tanks, and let's say it is actually a 10% gap, libertarians, it's all upside. They may very well get 6, 7, maybe. But it's just, we're betting on a lot of people who don't necessarily identify as libertarians to say that I'm going to show up and protest rather than stay home, which is a tough sell.
So
even for libertarians like Dustin.
In 2012, there's no way Gary's not getting 5%. That's
what they were saying then.
You're right, but the highest...
He thought he was getting 4 last time and got 996,000 people.
Right.
He was betting on 4 million.
So
0.97%.
So basically what happened, there was really only one poll where he polled above 10%.
Yeah.
There was like a one Aaron poll. And the media attention that he gets... So if you go back and look at the Gary Johnson for President podcast feed, you can see the media that he got in 2012. Compare that with now. I posted, I think it was 10 different audio clips from just the last week alone. So he gets the kind of, I think he had like 6 or 7 major media interviews that I posted in 2012. It wasn't very many at all. He was never on.
People weren't looking for an alternative.
There wasn't a CNN town hall. So I do think that 5% is, but libertarians have the only time libertarians are hopeful is election results of what they're going to get on election day, and then in reality smacks.
But I feel like we are setting that bar so freaking high. There's going to be a whole bunch of Libertarian Party members who are like, this was our chance. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, and we still got 3.5 million votes, 3.5% of the popular vote, and didn't trigger the public financing.
I don't see 5%, and I think that in.
I hope there is, personally.
I think in 2012 there was, fallout, people left over from the Ron Paul campaign, like, oh, well, who do I vote for now? Okay, Gary Johnson. And that movement was so much bigger then than Gary Johnson seems to be now. I don't know. I'm not as optimistic.
Like Gary's way more, his name ID now is so much higher than it was ever in 2012. And people just don't want to admit that they're either going to not vote because they feel like that's letting people down on civic duty, but they can't stomach saying they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And no one in America will come out and be at a public venue and say, I like that Donald Trump. Like, unless you're at the Beach Grove Walmart or you're at the trailer park.
Right.
That's the voter, the Duck Dynasty caucus. And so like in Republican in Indianapolis, there's the Republican donut counties, which are like the upper middle class Republican college educated voter, and Donald Trump is even less palatable to admit publicly than Mike Pence is, who's our governor, whose big issues are the social issues, even though most of them share similar ones. Donald Trump somehow won the Republican nomination with no one wanting to admit in public except how many people do you know that just come out and say, I like Trump?
Actually, a surprising amount. I can't say the same about Hillary, actually.
No, no one likes Hillary.
I hear a lot more people talking. I mean, there are people that I suspect will vote for Hillary, but they're not out, drumming her up or anything.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more of that for Trump, actually. And, outside of the liberty circles that I also run with you guys, I hear more about Trump than I do about Johnson.
Yeah, me too.
Positive about Trump.
Yeah. It's just I don't hear the people that were Mitt Romney Republicans who respected his effectiveness and ability. They just will not admit that they're going to vote for him, but they're still going to vote on election day. And you put them in a private booth and it's a close matchup, they're going to pull the trigger for Trump rather than Gary Johnson, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the mistake we're setting. I just don't want to see all the momentum zapped out of the LP and the liberty movement in general, because I have a feeling if we go in expecting like 6, 7, 8%, and we get 3 million, and even though we tripled last time, it'll be like, what's the point?
Right.
What do you guys think about 5%? You think you're going to hit 5%?
I think it's totally possible. I think if it doesn't happen, like going back to our earlier conversation, to me, it's like Donald Trump put such an emphasis on his polling numbers, and people put such an emphasis on a number like that. Like, to me, 5% would make me ecstatic, but so would 2% or 3% or 4%. Because, like, to me, that just shows that people are more willing to accept a third party
We doubled.
Are right. You know,
that's the problem. Is I just don't want people to think that there's a really good chance Gary got included in the debates. We might hit 10%. Then you get 3 or 4, and you're like,
I
shit.
feel like that's the argument that a lot of people are getting sold, though. In hey, vote for the third party candidate, is that hey, other people are doing it too, and if they see that it's only 2 or 3%, they're going to be like, well, I guess I was in an extreme minority, and I. A lot of those people are going to say, I think I wasted my vote.
There you go, pissing on hope again. You fucking ANCAPs, man.
I'm not.
I get what you're saying.
Don't rely on the electoral system for your hope, I'd say.
Right. Like, people have to realize that this is a long-term movement, that this is not about your short-term gratification, that this is about long-term change. And if you're exactly right. If you're living and dying by election day results, then trust me, I used to do that for a living. That's a sad way to live.
Yeah.
So you just got to make sure that your hopes and dreams are not all pinned on any kind of modern or past political system, frankly. Okay, so we need to start wrapping up, even though Greg has left the table. Dustin, thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Are you coming to the pool party on Saturday?
I don't think so.
Nobody else is, man. Jeremiah got his pool, so Jeremiah doesn't have many friends, so he wanted to use my friends to have a pool party. So I said sure, and but nobody's coming, so I guess I'm not that popular either. So, Dustin, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You did very well.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was fun.
Did you enjoy keeping your private beliefs to yourself until provoked by a libertarian who respects individual opinion?
Yes, I enjoyed that as well.
Come into this apartment, you will fight. Trust me. Ask my ex-girlfriend.
Oh, gosh.
Not physically. Greg, let's wrap up. So at the end of the show, we get some time. Just you and the listener. You get to bond with the
intimate.
listener. Right. A romantic, I'd say, if you want to tongue kiss them. To say whatever you'd like to say, anything that you missed, anything that you'd like to promote, anything that you just want to say in general, if you want to talk about birds. I don't know what you're into. So we can have Greg go first if you'd like to see how it's done.
Okay.
All right. Greg.
I was just going to actually give a shout out for the first time. We don't always give President Obama much love. We haven't had a chance to, but he did commute the prison sentences for roughly 300 people.
Yeah.
And that was that's an honorable move. I mean, he didn't necessarily grant them like clemency, but he did commute their sentences, and I think that is libertarian at its core. And I think that was the right thing to do, and I think he deserves praise for it, so I'm just going to give him a little shout out.
All right. Dustin?
Well, let's see. This is definitely a new experience for me. Thanks for having me on. And I guess I would just say that liberty to me is not a political philosophy. Liberty to me is a process by which I'd say anyone, or frankly inanimate matter, becomes a self-actualized individual. So from birth to self-actualization, that liberty is that process for me.
Very cool. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to our listeners. My mail got stopped this week because so many people sent us items from our Amazon wish list found at WeareLibertarians.com.
Wow.
Thank you to Tara Wilson. I don't know who sent the headphone extenders. I think it might have been Tara, but I'm not totally sure. There was no note, so if you are the person that sent us 4 headphone extenders, then thank you so much. Hey, just want to give you a reminder. You heard the ad at the top of the show. Make sure to go to jasonstapleton.com and subscribe to the podcast that Jason puts on every day. You need to be informed. He is a paid advertiser. We are trying to impress him and give him his money's worth. So please go to jasonstapleton.com, subscribe to his podcast, and tell them Chris and Greg sent you. Thank you so much for joining us here on We Are Libertarians. We love you long time. And as always, we promise
to do better next time.
Hi. Yeah, it's me. It's Chris Spangle. You know, the funny thing about doing a podcast is that unless people talk with you on social media, you have no idea who's listening. You don't know who's listening. And you have no idea what the audience looks like. I'm guessing male, young, white. But we don't know for sure. I'm sure you're all very good looking, though. But tell us a little bit more about yourself and about what you like or don't like about the show by going to wearelibertarians.com, scroll down to the bottom on the sidebar, and take our listener survey. It really helps us out. It helps us understand who you are and what you like. And then we ignore it. No, I'm just kidding. Greg ignores it because Greg's a dick. But I listen to it. I take everything you say very seriously. Again, so what we've learned is go to wearelibertarians.com, scroll down to the bottom, scroll down to the sidebar on the right, take the listener survey. I will read it. Greg will ignore it. Greg is a dick. All right, thank you for considering taking 2 minutes out of your day to make We Are Libertarians better. Greg is a dick. Thank you for listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Get our other shows at wearelibertarians.com.